Welcome back, everyone. In the last lesson, we assessed where your band stands, and you're probably itching to start upgrading your production gear. I'm a musician too, and I know how excited we all get about buying new gear, so I didn't want to wait until lesson 7 to give you all the goods, but instead we're getting right into the good stuff in lesson 2 so that you don't have to wait any longer. Now listen, I've been in the trenches for over 20 years, playing every dive bar, festival stage, event space, wedding venue you can imagine. And I'm about to do something that most music pros would never do. I'm blowing the lid off my company's entire gear arsenal. This isn't just a list. It's 15 years of hard-earned knowledge. Every piece of equipment I've beaten up, tested, and relied on to keep my live music business running like a well-oiled machine. 60 pieces of gear that have survived countless gigs, survived brutal load-ins, and never let me down when the pressure was on. You know how long it would take you to figure this out on your own? Years. Probably a decade and a half, which is coincidentally exactly how long I've been collecting these gems. But here's the deal. I'm handing you my entire playbook. No gatekeeping, no holding back. Imagine walking into any venue, knowing exactly what gear you need. No more guesswork, no more throwing money at random equipment. This list, it's like having a backstage pass to professional music production for small and medium scale events. We're not just talking microphones, mixers, and speakers. We're talking about your future, your sound, your business. And I'm about to give you a 15-year shortcut to all that. So whatever you paid for this course, this is the lesson that makes it entirely worth it. This is your golden ticket to your success. So let's get right into it. All right, our complete gear list, a big unveil. You're going to want to come over to your Profit with Production Resources sheet once again. And down here at the bottom, you're going to see your complete gear list and buy links. You're welcome to follow along with me as we go through this, but I'm literally going to go row by row through this entire sheet and explain to you why I feel all of these pieces of gear are necessary for your arsenal. So we're going to start right here at the top with the PreSonus 24R rack mixing console. I'm going to go ahead and open this up here in my Amazon tab. And take a look at this thing. If you're familiar with what mixing consoles are and what they look like, you'll notice, first of all, this is a really small mixing console. It doesn't even look like a mixing console. Where's the actual console? All it is a rack with a bunch of plugs in it. That's exactly what this is, and that's exactly why I love it. This takes up 2 spaces on your rack. If you don't know what a rack is, we're going to get to that in a little bit, but it's very, very compact. As you can see, it's completely iPad controlled. On the back side, we've got a bunch more plugs here. So you've got your power, your control plugs there. And then over here, we've got a whole bunch of auxiliary outputs. So these are for all of your monitors. And then of course your mains over there on the right-hand side. So in the front is where all your equipment goes in. These are all combo jacks. So you've got a 1/4 inch in and an XLR in and up to 24 inputs there, which is great for most bands. I have a 9-piece band personally, and this has worked great for us. We've got enough channels on here to mic all of the drum set with a couple overheads as well as bass, guitar, a couple lines for keyboard, 3 horns, and 4 singers. And then we've got even a couple spare channels left over for plugging in a DJ if we've got one for that event, or an MC microphone, that sort of thing. If you get beyond that, this mixer will get a little bit tight. Not to worry, they actually have expansion boxes for these things. You can get little stage boxes that plug right into the back here, into one of these ports here where you see network audio there. You can actually plug another little stage box in and expand this with another, I believe, 8 or 16 channels. So you don't actually need a whole new mixer or anything. You can just wire in a whole bunch more channels through a little stage box. Super, super handy. Really nice to have that expandability here within a mixer. I've tried a few different mixers out. I've tried the Touch Mix by QSC. I've tried the Behringer X32 consoles, and I find those iPad apps actually a little harder to work with than the PreSonus one. PreSonus has just been my favorite for years. I've been using this mixer for well over a decade now. It's really a matter of personal preference when you get down to the actual interfaces on the iPad devices and things, but as you start to work with these things yourself, you'll develop your own preferences. But specifically for me, I think this is one of the smallest actual hardware component mixing consoles that there is out there. And I'm all about keeping my rig small and having a small footprint so that we can be as efficient as possible on gig day. So other great things about this mixer, if you were to upgrade to the 32 channel option, you would get another additional 4 inputs on the back here, or outputs on the back here rather. So these are all the auxiliary outputs. I've got 12 on here right now. If I bought the next level up mixer, which is a 32R console, that would give me 16 outputs. That means you can have 16 individual mixes going out to your different monitors, or if you do in-ear monitors, which we'll talk about in a bit as well, these can be joined together or coupled or paired into stereo mixes. And on this specific console, because we've got 12 auxiliary outs, that could give you 12 individual outs or 6 individual stereo mixes. Very helpful for doing in-ear monitors. So that's all available here on this one console. It's got a ton of effects built in here that I think all sound great. The amount you can do when you're mixing on this mixer is just incredible. And like I said, I find the interface really, really nice. For the price, you really can't beat it. $1,200 to get you 24 channels. You're paying $50 a channel. That is an insanely low price. Even old consoles back in the day that were entirely desk mixers and things did not get that cheap. This wasn't this cheap when I bought it. It's actually gone down in price. I don't really know why, but definitely buy it. It's a steal at this price. Let me see what else I wanted to say about that. So yeah, like I said, the app is really easy for mixing. It does require an external router for wireless mixing, which I will talk about on our next line of items here. It is super compact. Like I said, the really nice thing about this, it is a digital mixing console. It will save your mixes, and from gig to gig, you can just recall them, and it saves you so much time when you're setting up to be able to do that. One recommendation I would have is always like what I actually did with my band, and what you can do with this mixer is you can record your whole show with it. You can either plug an SD card right into the front port here, right there. If you see just near, I can't move my mouse and see that, there it is. Right here in the corner, there's actually an SD card port. You can stick an SD card in there and get a stereo mix recorded to that directly as your show is happening. But you can also plug a computer, a laptop, into the back of this mixer and record every single stem individually. When you do that, you can then go home with all of those stems and run them back through the mixer as if it was a live show, plug it into your monitoring system at home, and actually do your mix at home as if it was a live show. So you can record, you can bring up all those channels in their dry state without any effects applied to them. And you can apply all those effects and those EQs and those compressors and whatever right there in your home studio and tweak that mix to get it sounding really, really good. So when you go to your next live gig, you've basically got all those channel strips set up for yourself. And that can save you an hour, 2 hours on the gig to not have to mix all that stuff on the fly. Obviously, your speakers will change. There'll be a different speaker set when you're doing a live show, and the acoustics of the room need to be taken into account. We'll talk about that later in the course. But just being able to recall your mixes and having your channel strips all labeled and the effects and EQs pretty close to where you're going to want them saves you so much time. So I cannot emphasize how important it is to have a digital mixer on your shows. And especially when it comes to doing in-ear monitor mixes, you basically can't do that without a digital mixer these days. You just do not have the time to set up thing analog at gigs anymore, especially for weddings. What else can I say about the mixer? Yes, we do have a little video right here that has a great overview of this entire console. If you want to see what the actual app looks like when you're controlling this, highly recommend checking that out. Moving along here, with the digital mixer, obviously you do need an iPad to control that. It doesn't have to be an iPad. You can get an Android device as well. In my experience, it does tend to work a little better with Apple devices, but maybe that's just because Apple devices work better. I don't know. I'm an Apple guy. Hopefully you are too. The other thing about the digital mixer is that in this specific model, you can actually download iPhone apps for this as well to control individual monitor mixes. So every musician on stage can control their own monitor mix, which means your front of house engineer does not have to worry about that, which is a huge bonus. And every musician has full control over what they want to do in their wedge, which just makes most musicians really, really happy. But you do need a router to do that. So I've recommended here our TP-Link Archer B3200 wireless router, which looks like this. I'll just pull this up on Amazon here. You do want to not cheap out on your router. I will say you do need something that's got enough bandwidth to be able to handle what this mixer is going to throw at it. Pretty much any router is going to be able to handle a single iPad connecting to it and managing that just fine. But if you've got a 10-piece band and you've got 10 people trying to connect their iPhones to control their own monitors, and you've got 1 or 2 front of house guys running around, maybe a monitor tech, maybe a front of house tech, already that's 12 devices you're connecting to that router. And if they all want control through that mixing interface, you may run into some dropouts in those cases if you don't have a powerful enough router. So this one here will give you enough bandwidth to do that. I don't have time to go into super details as to why, but you're welcome to research that on your own and figure out the different router options you might have there. But I do say over here, this one's got 5,400 megabytes per second, so that's enough to get several devices connected to this. It says up to 25 devices connected at one time. I'm not exactly sure how they measure that though, so there's a certain amount of bandwidth needed for mixing control to happen. It's not just like you're checking your email or something, which would be considered a lot less of a weighty task. But anyway, and then of course, to be able to connect the router to the mixer, you need an Ethernet cable. Very important note regarding wireless devices. What I'm going to recommend further along in this lesson here is different wireless microphones, wireless in-ear systems. You may even want to get wireless lighting at some point. Maybe you've got, I don't know what other wireless devices you'd want to connect in here. The thing about wireless technology is that it can interfere with each other. Microphones and in-ear monitor systems especially do not like being super close to routers. If you've ever heard that sound on a speaker, if you've left your cell phone sitting on top of a guitar amp or something like that, and you hear that little that little signal that comes through, that's wireless interference from typically a Wi-Fi type signal. So how do you avoid that? You really should not have your Wi-Fi router anywhere near that other wireless equipment. And generally speaking, you want it to be at least 10 to 20 feet away. So if you're going to have your mixer here installed inside of a rack with all of your wireless microphones, with all of your wireless transmitters for in-ear monitor packs and things, you want to have your Wi-Fi router somewhere far away from that. Typically what I'll do is I'll have my mixing station happening on one side of the stage left or stage right, and then I will run a long Ethernet cable, guy right here. I've recommended this one that is 25 feet. This can get you all the way to the other side of the stage typically. So you can run this along the back of the stage and put your router on the floor completely the opposite side of the stage from where your mixing station is, and that will avoid that kind of wireless interference and those little bops and squeaks that come through there that will either really annoy your musicians if those signals are coming through in their in-ear monitor mixes, or of course your microphones as well. Picking those up is not a great. Very cheap to get a long cable too, so just invest in that and don't even question it. It's just what you want to do. All right, that takes care of our mixing situation. Let's talk about speakers and monitors now. All right, I'm recommending a few different types of sound systems here, because if you are going to provide sound in different contexts for medium and large scale events, we're talking everything from like a really small cocktail party that could be happening in someone's backyard patio with 50 guests maybe, to an outdoor wedding ceremony that's maybe got 100 to 200 guests at it, to possibly an indoor ballroom situation inside of a hotel where you've got 2 to 3 to maybe up to 600 people inside dancing around, making noise, drinking, all that sort of stuff. So different sound systems for different contexts. And we're going to start here with this one right here is the EXM Mobile 8 3-way battery powered portable PA. In fact, the first two items on my speakers list are both battery powered. So let's take a look at these guys. Yorkville EXM Mobile 8 is a fantastic speaker for any type of a small scale outdoor event. It even works inside, obviously, but because it's battery powered, it just makes it so much more portable. On the back of this thing, you've got 3 different channels for plugging stuff in, and every one of them is a combo jack. So you can put a 1/4 inch or an XLR into all of those lines. You can see there, let me zoom in a little bit more on this. You've even got a little bit of shape, that's EQ, a little bit of reverb. So there's some effects on each one of these channels. You've got your battery power indicator there, which is super handy, and you've even got a Bluetooth connection there. So this is super handy for doing a small wedding ceremony, for example, where you might need to connect your iPhone to be able to play some tracks as people are walking down the aisle. You might need to connect a microphone for the officiant. Maybe you've got another microphone or a keyboard or a violin or something for your musician who's standing by. This rig can kind of handle all of that. And if you need to be able to power this up, give it a little more, not power it up, sorry, make it a little more powerful, you can actually use these little mix in and out sections on the back here to link this to other speakers. So if you wanted one and on one side of the ceremony and one on the other, so you've got kind of a right-left situation going on, it makes it really easy to link them together and do that. So you don't need a mixer, an external mixer to run these. They are kind of a self-contained system, battery powered, and the battery lasts quite a long time on these. I don't even know what it says on these, but the next one I'm going to show you is the same kind of thing. And I'm just going to go ahead and open that up because I have a lot more experience with this particular one. My company's owned a couple of these for several years. And with this particular speaker, you get, I think they advertise 8 hours of battery life on this one. I've actually used this on events where I've used it I turned it on in the morning, and by 7 o'clock that night, it was still at like 50%. So unless you're really pumping a high level of music out of this thing constantly, it's probably going to last a really long time. So this one's kind of the big brother to the previous model we just looked at here, the EXM Mobile 8. So this is an 8-inch speaker. This is a 12-inch speaker, which means you get a lot more juice out of this one. On the back, again, you've got this 3-channel mixer that Yorkville is so famous for. A lot of these speakers nowadays I find have the 3-channel mixer on the back. Apologies for the graininess of this photo, but you can kind of see on here, once again, we've got combo jacks for plugging in 1/4-inch or XLR cables. We've got a individual volume level as well as some reverb and effects on there as well. You've got a master volume control down there. And then again, the link area to be able to connect this to other speakers. So many reasons why I recommend these two types. If you were to pick one or the other, I would say go for the bigger one because that just allows you to scale up a little better. But let's go over some of the characteristics of these things. This one, you've got, obviously they're both sort of grab and go, easy for cocktails. They're both speaker mountable. They have holes in the bottom for you to put them up on speaker poles if you want to, but obviously very portable. They're also easy to cover for outdoor gigs. I'm going to recommend some speaker covers in a little bit that make it really easy for you to cover these things in case of rain or snow or too much sun. Even if it's a sunny event, any kind of event, basically, I will put covers over my speakers because you just never know what's going to happen. Maybe a bird sits on there and takes a crap down the back side of your speaker, and now you've got bird poo in all of your connections. It has happened. Or the sun is just shining too hard. And what the risk is with a battery-powered speaker is that, especially because these speakers are black, they attract the sunlight, they heat up like crazy, and that degrades your battery power, or your battery life, as well as kind of risking a fire there because the battery is already hot itself, and then you're heating it up with more sunlight. It's just not a great recipe. Make sure you're covering your speakers in any outdoor situation. That's why I recommend these two, because you can easily purchase speaker cover bags to go over those, whereas some of the other speakers down the list aren't so great for the outdoor context because they're not really coverable easily, at least not with a standard off the market speaker bag. You'd have to build something yourself, which is not ideal. So I've said here, great outdoor speaker for ceremonies, cocktails, etc. You've got your 3-channel mixer on the back, linkable to other speakers. 12-inch speaker on this one, a 12-inch woofer means you've got lots of low end on this speaker, a little more low end than you would out of the 8-inch woofer on the smaller speaker there. And I guess the only con to this one is that there's a no on-speaker delay. And what I'm talking about there is, one of my preferential uses for these speakers is to use them as fill speakers. So if you've got a really large venue or you're doing sound that has to go all the way down a city street or way out into a field or something, you may not want to just have your front of house sound or the speaker system that sits right at the front of the stage. Instead, you might want to have that, but you might also want to have speakers further back in the venue to be able to boost the sound as it dies off, because sound will dissipate and sound will diffuse. And as it's projecting out through space, the sound waves get less and less. So if you're standing 500 meters away from your PA, it's going to be a lot quieter, obviously, than if you're standing right in front of the speaker. So if you want to have fill speakers going throughout your space, you need to delay them, because if the sound leaves the front of your stage, it'll start traveling. Sound doesn't travel very fast, so it starts going through space. And then if your other speaker is sitting way over here at the other end of the field, your sound that's traveling through the speaker wire to get to that speaker will arrive much faster than the actual sound wave does coming from the front of house speaker, just traveling through the air. So what you actually want to do is take this speaker that you've put way out in the field and add a delay on it. Not an echo delay, like delay. That's more of an echo. Delay actually just says, okay, when the audio signal reaches this speaker, don't let it come out of the speaker right away, but instead delay it for 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 milliseconds. General rule of thumb is you want to go for about 1 millisecond per every foot of distance you're traveling. Little sidebar there, but basically what you're doing is allowing that speaker to wait a little bit for the sound wave from your main to catch up to it, and then both waves are in alignment. So instead of having this weird echo kind of effect that your audience would hear, the sound is just boosted a little bit and the volume is picked up again when it gets out to that speaker. So when you're doing that with fill speakers, you can either add that delay at the mixer level or you can add that on the speaker itself. Some speakers do actually have a delay knob that you can adjust right on the speaker. And I do have one of those I'm recommending as well. So I'm going to talk about that next here. But otherwise, you're controlling that delay on the mixer itself. But that's one thing to note about these fill speakers. All right, so those are your two sort of portable outdoor type PAs, easy to cover, easy to move, battery powered, last forever. Just don't even think about it. Go buy them. They are going to be worth the bang for the buck. All right, next system here I'm recommending is the Electro Voice EV50 column speaker. Let's take a look at this. In terms of speakers that look great, this is hands down the best one. It is so sleek. It is so nice. You look at this thing, there's not a single wire anywhere. The actual wires, like this will have the back of this mixer actually looks like this, speaker. So you've basically got a small mixer on there, just like we did on the Yorkville unit. So this one has, once again, it's sort of 3 inputs. You've got 2 channels there where you've got a combo jack, XLR, or 1/4-inch input. And then on input 3 there, you actually have a choice of a left and right RCA jack, or you can go in through an 1/8-inch jack if you're coming out of an iPhone or an iPad or something. So you still have your 3-channel input there. This specific speaker, really to connect itself, there are no wires at all. You can see as I zoom out here, like you're just plugging this column pole into the speaker, and it's got wires built right into it that feed up into your line array stack at the top here. So it's a very sleek system. It looks great. These sound absolutely amazing. The range of sound you get out of these is phenomenal. The top of this speaker set here, I don't think there are any photos of it here, unfortunately. Nope. But the speaker array that is inside of this top column has little tiny speakers that point in many different directions. And essentially that widens the spectrum of sound that can come out of here, or widens the spread of sound, I should say. So you'll find that if you put these in front of your band as main speakers, which I will do with my band all the time when we're performing in really small venues, you'll find that you almost don't even need floor monitors in your front line, because these speakers project almost completely outwards on a 90-degree angle from where they're pointed. So you can be standing right beside this thing and hear the sound as if the speaker was pointed right at your face. So it's a pretty incredible little system. It spreads the sound out like crazy. It's got a ton of power. These things can go really, really loud. It comes with this handy case for rolling the sub around, which has wheels on it. Big bonus for moving subwoofers because they are very heavy. Got a little handle to drag it easily. It is a bit awkward. You get this carrying case that the front speaker, the top speaker and the pole come in that are really wide. You can't really put it on top of the sub and drag it because it just clotheslines itself when you walk through a door frame. But what I do is we have 2 of these, so I would recommend you buy 2 because you're going to need one on either side of your stage when you're doing setups. These cases, if you see that little buckle strap at the top there, the 2 rolling subwoofer cases can actually be connected to each other. So you can roll them all as one piece and just put the little speaker bags on top of those, and you roll them as a long unit, and that makes it really easy to get them around. So very helpful when you're doing it that way. These are obviously a little on the pricey side, $1,800 for 1 unit, but like I said, you're getting your top and your sub all in one. There's a ton of power in these, and they just will not let you down. So highly recommend those. What else do I want to say about that? Looks amazing. Just 1 power cord to get it working. I didn't mention that, but because it's all in 1 unit, you only plug in one thing and you're done. Makes it really great for weddings because people want that sort of sleek, nice, clean look, and this checks all those boxes. If you do have, sometimes I've seen these for sale without the sub bag. You really can't use this unit without the sub bag. You really want that in transit because the front grille of this subwoofer is not heavy duty metal. It will dent easily, but when you put it in this sub bag, it's got a hard case basically on the backside where the sub front lays into, so it'll really protect your speaker from denting there, and you really want to do that. Otherwise, delay control. We talked earlier about delaying your fill speakers. This unit actually has delay built right into the speaker itself. So on this mixer, you'll see at the back side here, if I bring this one up again, this little knob right here where it says master volume, and it says push for DSP. That when you push it, it actually opens up a whole settings and configuration menu within the system. And that's where you can add a whole bunch of other things, effects, more bass, more treble, that sort of stuff. So there's basic EQ in there. And one of the things you can do is add delay onto here. So if you have these as your fill speakers, I've used these in large conference centers where the band is performing on stage. We have all of our big subs and big main speakers positioned at the stage area. And then further back in the room, say 100, 200 feet, these speakers are sitting there and they're pointed across the room to help kind of fill in that dead zone. Dial in the delay right here on the speaker so you can actually be standing right beside it and using your ears to get that delay into the right zone. So that is super, super helpful. I wish more speakers had that, but unfortunately for some reason it's just not thought about in the designs. Maybe one day that will change. You do have a mix out on there as well, which allows you to, once again, connect these to each other, which when you're doing fill speakers can actually be really, really helpful. So you see that mix out right there. When you're connecting fill speakers, if you're going to try to delay all your fill speakers, if you had a really, really long room that was, say, I don't know, 600 feet, you might want a fill speaker at around the 200-foot mark and another one at around the 400-foot mark. If you did not have delay settings on the individual speakers, you would have to run one cable from your mixer all the way to the first speaker, which is 200 feet. And then you'd have to run a separate cable all the way from your mixer again, all the way out to the second speaker. Now you're talking about 600 feet of cable, right? Whereas instead, if both speakers have delay controls on them, like in the case of our EVs here, you can run one cable from your mixer to your first EV. That's just 200 feet of cable. Then you're going to run a cable instead of starting from your mixer. You can start that cable from the mix out on your first EV here and run that straight to your second EV. Now you're only doing 400 feet of cable instead of 600 feet of cable. Imagine if you had a long enough situation where you needed a third speaker out in the field there at maybe the 800-foot mark. Now you're talking about 200 plus 400 plus 800, or sorry, 200 plus 400 plus 600 feet of cable. That's almost double the amount of cable you would need if you can just daisy chain all the speakers together. So think about that. It is a big time saver, not just in just wrapping your cables and stuff, but it's going to save you money as well, not having to own and double the amount of cable. Another big bonus with these is they're Bluetooth controlled. So you actually can put an app on your iPhone or iPad. You don't need a router or anything to set this up. It's just a Bluetooth app. Obviously, because it's Bluetooth, you can't get very far away from the speaker, but it does make it really helpful, especially for wedding ceremonies and things where you don't necessarily want to be jumping up and down to control the speaker all the time. But if a microphone's not loud enough, or if the music's too loud or something, you can just be sitting there in your chair at the ceremony like everybody else, dialing your speaker in, and you don't need to worry about all the extra cables and garbage that come with setting up a router for stuff. So very handy feature there. I will say the con for this though is that they're not great for outdoor situations because you simply cannot bag it, right? There's no way you can put a bag over top of this column setup when you're in an outdoor situation and have it cover all the important parts of this. Maybe you could, but it would look kind of ridiculous. So not a great situation for outdoor contexts like that if you're expecting any kind of rain or snow. All right, so what we've talked about here is speakers that are sort of on the smaller end of things. I would say for these EVs, those are for your small scale events. We talked about in lesson 1, small scale events for small scale crowds being anywhere from 50, maybe up to 100 people, okay? In an indoor setting where there's gonna be a band playing, definitely don't wanna go much higher than 100 people with these EV systems, even with 2 of them on either side of the band. The thing about these is they don't get very tall. This column speaker, I think, is just like 6.5 or 7 feet tall. So if you've got a whole bunch of tall people in your crowd and they're standing in front of this thing dancing, they absorb all the sound coming out of this thing. It doesn't have a very wide spread. So if you're standing further back in the crowd, you may find that you just don't hear very well if there are people standing right in front of these speakers. And usually that's the case in these really small settings where people kind of are dancing right in front of the band. So bear that in mind. If it does get up to be more of a plus over 100 person size crowd, you definitely want something larger than this. But in the context of a wedding ceremony, for example, where people are seated, the speakers are going to clear their heads no problem, and people aren't yelling and talking and drinking and screaming. They're sitting down, being attentive, being quiet. You've only got to hear the officiant's voice, really. Totally fine for that kind of a context. You could probably, these would be fine in even, I would say, a 200 to 300 person wedding ceremony. If it was in a quiet setting, this would be totally fine. So that gets us up to about our 100 person crowd size. Let's talk bigger. So the Yorkville, you may notice here, I've got a lot of Yorkville gear on the list so far. I'm a huge fan of Yorkville. I'm going to sidebar and give you a little bit of Yorkville information here. Yorkville is a brand that produces audio equipment of all kinds out of Ontario in Canada. Yorkville is actually owned by Long & McQuaid, which is the largest music retailer across all of Canada. And Yorkville produces all of the speakers and most of the gear that Long & McQuaid rents in their rental department. I don't know about the exact details of Long & McQuaid's total financial statement, but I know that they make a ton of money every year. I would probably estimate it's at least half of their business off of rentals. They rent equipment. That is a huge, huge moneymaker for them. Now, they wouldn't make as much money as they do off of rentals if their rental equipment was crap. Because if it was breaking down all the time, they'd be spending so much money repairing it, they wouldn't make any money on it. But Yorkville gear has been specifically designed to be battle ready. It's dummy proof. It's usually really, really easy to figure out when you take it out of the box. You don't need to read a manual for it because they expect that people are going to be renting this stuff at the counter, walking out the door and heading to a gig, and probably not having much experience with audio equipment, and they just have to be able to make this thing work. So that's how this gear is all designed. It's battle tested. It is really, really bulletproof. The grills on their speakers are heavy duty metal that can take a beating. It does not dent easily. If you dent it in, you can always just boop, like bop it back out again and it's fine. You can drop these things sometimes and they'll be okay. Like they're just the kind of system you want if you're going to be using it again and again and again. It's like the old adage, if you want to buy a car, and you were looking for a quality car, just look at what all the taxi companies in your city are driving, right? They would not be investing in vehicles that broke down every 100 kilometers. Like, that just doesn't make sense. So Long & McQuaid has invested in this brand, Yorkville, to be able to build all of their speaker stuff to the point where it's so bulletproof, they almost never have to repair it. And if they do, the parts and the whatever and the labor are cheap and easily accessible. That's just been a great business model for them. If it works for them, it's going to work for you. So if you get Yorkville equipment, it's just going to last. You may hear people arguing that Yorkville may be not the best sounding stuff out there. Maybe there's Bose or something that sounds better. Maybe. I don't know. But in the context of a live situation, you really have to take into account the fact that these speakers are not, like, no one's listening to them at a studio level, right? People are drunk. Their hearing's all wacky. You're working with weird acoustics in whatever venue you're in. There's different band instruments have different sounds and things and different microphones. Like, there's so many parts of the signal chain that can whack up your audio in a live situation. And the reality is you're just never going to get that live audio to sound like a studio recording. They're just completely different beasts. So yes, could you find a speaker that is a little better than Yorkville? Sure. There's these K-Array systems. If you've got a ton of money you want to blow, I think they're like 50 grand for a speaker or something. Go ahead. If that's your cup of tea, awesome. If you've got the money to blow, great. Most of us don't. And most audiences, I would say 99 out of 100 people listening to your live show are not even going to notice a difference between a $50,000 speaker and a $2,000 speaker. So bear that in mind as you're building this out. We're not going for studio quality here because that's just not what this situation is. All right, sidebar over. This is my plug for Yorkville. By the way, I do not work for Yorkville. I do not make any money when they sell product. Maybe they will sponsor me one day if they see this video, but they are not sponsoring me yet. So I gain nothing if you buy Yorkville equipment, just the knowledge that if you follow my recommendation, you're most likely going to be really happy with the choice. And that is all I'm here for because, like I said, I'm not holding back in this lesson. We're giving you everything, our whole playbook. So the next thing I want to recommend here is the Yorkville PSA-1 1200 watt powered line array speaker. Let's check it out. I'll jump in here. And for those of you, by the way, just a little sidebar here, I've got the link to purchase this on Long & McQuaid's website. That works if you are in Canada. B&H Photo over here is the Yorkville dealer in the United States. So if you live in the United States, go ahead and click on the B&H Photo one and you can buy this there. All right, so get this out of the way. Here we are. First of all, looks great. I love the look of this speaker. It is nice. I don't know what else to say about it. One really handy thing about these is that you can stack them on top of each other without needing to fly them. So you've probably seen PAs inside large stadiums that are attached to the ceiling. That's what we call flying. So if a PA is flying, it's hung from the ceiling, and you can attach literally as many of these things as you want, I think. I don't know. I'm sure there's a limit, but sometimes you'll see 6 to 8 to 12 of these all connected to each other hanging from the ceiling. You're never going to get that big with a medium sized event. So 2 is probably the maximum you are ever going to need. These throw a ton of power. If you're doing up to a 600 person event, this is really all you need at the front of house PA, unless you're going to fly it. But again, we're not talking about that in this course. When you get into flying PAs, that's really much larger event production and not what we're really covering in this course. I'm going to quickly open up the B&H photo link here because I think they've got some better photos over there for us to look at. Yes. Okay, perfect. So this photo here, you can actually see right into the front of the speaker. And this is a line array in action. So you can see we've actually got 2 speakers stacked on top of each other on either side here, pointed in different directions. So when you talk about the spread of a speaker, each one of these speakers has about a 90-degree angle at which they project their sound. You can see my hands here up at that tiny little corner. I'll switch back over my other camera to demonstrate this. So a 90-degree angle is if you aimed a speaker out like that, it would project its sound out into the crowd like this. With the 2 little Yorkville speakers we're looking at here, because one of the speakers is angled a little bit in and the other one is angled a little bit in, now their 90-degree spread goes past each other like this, and basically instead of a speaker that's got this kind of a range when you stand in front of it, that kind of a range. If that makes sense. So, I don't know. I can't bend my hands like that. Basically almost a 90-degree angle there. And in fact, it's not 90 degrees, but what did I put on here? I think I wrote it down. There it is, 110-degree spread from this speaker. So that is actually the largest line array spread that I've found on the market for these types of speakers. So really, really wide dispersion, which makes it really helpful for medium-sized events because you can put these right sort of parallel with the front of the stage. And if somebody is dancing on the dance floor right in front of the band, they'll still hear the band fine. If you don't use line array speakers and you just have conventional speakers that are pointed out at your audience, the sound basically goes like that. So imagine my microphone here is a person on your dance floor. You've got the band performing right in front. Here's the edge of the stage. You've got a speaker on either side. Conventional speakers will point out at about a 90-degree angle, and the sound will go like this. And you're kind of missing this person on the dance floor. With a line array system, that spread is so much wider that now the sound waves are actually traveling right across the front of the stage as well. So this person standing on the dance floor is going to hear the sound just as well as the person standing behind a little bit. So bear that in mind. If you're wanting to deliver a really quality show for your clients, line array is absolutely the best way to go. The EV system that we just looked at does have line array technology in it as well. The little speaker column on top has different angled speakers inside of it, which is why I recommend that one. But this Yorkville system is one of the lowest cost opportunities for you to get into the line array system for your front of house for these bigger events as well. So jumping back into that, yes, big widespread for going across the front of your stage. The sound, I think, is phenomenal. Any speaker is going to require you to do a little bit of treatment on it. When you get it into a new room, you're going to have to EQ it a little bit. More on that later. But once you've kind of doctored these, they sound phenomenal in just about any setting. I've never been unpleased with them. They're really easy to put onto a stand, onto a subwoofer pole rather. As you can see in this photo here, there's a pole that comes out of the bottom, and this will drive into the subwoofer that sits below them. So you don't need a separate speaker stand for these, which I find just really nice. It makes the system look a lot nicer. And I'm going to see if I can find a photo here in a minute to show you guys what that might look like. Otherwise, let's see, 1200 watts, very powerful. Like I say, up to crowds of 400. I probably used just one speaker on either side of my band is totally fine. And that will give you a pitch that will easily fill a dance floor of 100 to 200 people. If you're going to get much beyond that, like I said, you can just go grab another one of these speakers, sit it on top. You don't need any special equipment. These come with the bars and the little connector cables here as well. So it's all just one unit. You don't need any special extra hardware for that. And stacking 2 on top is perfectly safe. I wouldn't go any higher than that without special flying gear. Probably for balancing more than that on top of a sub pole does get a little sketchy, but definitely 2 I have done before and that has worked fine. Okay, moving along. So I did put an alternate on here. The Yorkville PSA 1, because this is a Canadian company, may be a little hard to source in the United States. So I did find an alternate one by QSC. It's not quite as powerful as the Yorkville one there, but you can get that at Sweetwater and relatively the same price there, just $100 or so difference. Like I say, few hundred watts less power in there, but should be just about the same thing for you. All right, so what goes below this speaker? These are actually a pretty full range speaker. You can get a great sound out of these, but they don't have a lot of low end. There's no subwoofer built into here. So you're definitely going to want to have a sub sitting underneath this. And for that, I recommend the PS15S, which is a 1000 watt 15-inch subwoofer. Let's take a look at that. Pretty straight ahead, nice little box construction, handles on either side, hole in the top for you to put your sub pole. And like I said, your line arrays just sit right on top of that. So it makes it really easy to configure and set up, and no one's tripping over your speaker stands, because those stick out everywhere and they're kind of awkward. I like to hide my light stands behind these as well and put my lights up there, because those do have to go on a stand, but you almost don't even notice that because they kind of hide behind the sub, and then that makes it a little harder for people to trip over them as well. One really big bonus about these subs, they weigh about 80 pounds each, which makes them hard to carry and move around, but this box is solid wood construction. I'm gonna see if I can get a photo on the other side of it here, because I have a bit of a hack here that might be helpful. Nope, I can't. These product photos kind of suck. On the back of this subwoofer is not a whole lot. There's a power switch, there's a knob to sort of dial your volume, and then there's a little circuit breaker there. But there is thicker sides on the back. Like at the front here, you can see this edge is pretty thin, but on the back, there's a bit more of a frame there. And what you're actually able to do, because it's a solid wood construction, is you can attach your own casters to this. And that's exactly what I've done. I have 2 of these subwoofers myself, and on the back side of these, I have attached 4 little wheels, so that all I have to do is tip this subwoofer back onto its backside, and I can roll it just like I would a cart. I can put 2 of these together, and I put a little piece of metal or a wood frame over top of them, which connects them as a cart, and I can stack my speakers on top of there, and now I've got my whole front end PA, my 2 subs and my 2 tops rolling as a single unit, which makes it really quick and easy to get in and out of a venue. I'm going to actually bring up a photo of that now. Apologies for the graininess of this, but you can basically see here is my load-in setup for a gig. So I've got my 2 subs sitting right over there, and you can see the casters underneath them that they roll on. On top, I have this gray piece of carpeted plywood with a frame around it that just sits over top of them like a lid on top of a container, basically. And it's got enough of a frame that it holds on to the 2 tops of those subwoofers, and when I put the speakers on top, there's enough sort of grip there, I guess, that it all holds together as one unit as I'm rolling it around. So it makes moving this entire PA really easy. These casters are, what are they? I believe they're 3.5-inch casters. You definitely want to get big enough ones that can roll over a door sill. Don't do the dumb thing that I did when I first attached wheels to my subs and put, I think they were 1-inch wheels on there. They just couldn't get over any door sill, and I was having to take this thing all apart and pull it apart and put it back together every time I had to go through a doorway. Don't want to do that. That's super annoying. So make sure your casters are big enough to get over bumps, and for that you're going to need a 3.5 to 4-inch diameter caster there. So got my 2 subs sitting beside each other, the 2 tops on top there, and that's the whole front end PA. So very, very easy to move around. Super, super duper portable. Back over to this. All right. I will make quick mention of the fact that when you're looking at speakers, you're going to see a power rating of a wattage power rating on them. And for example, this subwoofer right here is rated at this 2000 watt peak. So you're going to see a peak rating. And then if you read further down into their specification somewhere, you will see another rating that they call usually program power. So if I do a quick search for program, you can see right here at the top, it says 1000 watt program, 2000 watt peak, and 1000 watt program. You can do some research and figure out exactly what those mean if you want more of a definition there, but essentially what the program power is that's the rating that this speaker is designed to output over long periods of time. Like if you ran a 1000 watt signal to this speaker, it could basically run forever at that level, and that's kind of how it was built. It was built to withstand that. Whereas the 2000 watt limit up here is how fast, how much you can push that speaker to in like an instantaneous moment, but it cannot last at that level. It's very rare that it would anyway. When you think about how sound is formed and how it happens, like if you hit the bass drum, for example, boom, there's this big crack of sound that happens in one instant. If that boom of sound got up to 2000 watts, that would be okay for this speaker. But if you wanted that boom to last for 10 seconds or a minute, that would probably blow the speaker out. It's just not designed to withstand that amount of sound pressure over a long period of time. So generally when you're looking at speakers, this is just kind of the number they use in marketing speak because it looks bigger and everybody wants higher numbers when they're buying things. But really the number you need to be looking at is this 1000 watt power, program power, because that is what this speaker is actually more likely to consume and more able to actually output without problem. So you'll notice here the Yorkville PSA1, this is a 1200 watt powered line array top, and when you actually dig into the specifics on that speaker, you're going to see here, because it's line array, we actually have several different speakers in there, and they're all capable of different wattages. But as you dial down here, if I do, here we go. So you've got all these different speakers built into the front of this thing, and you can see all their different wattages here. So some of them have are configured for a 75 watt output with a 200 watt peak. Some of them have 675 watt program with a 1000 watt peak. So all in all together, these program power levels will add up to what they've got here as the 1200, or sorry, the peak power levels all added up will go up to that 1200 watt peak. So I think all in all, this is around did I write that down here? I didn't calculate it for you. I didn't put it on there, sorry. But that should be about, I think it's around 600 or 700 watts of actual program power in this speaker. So still a lot of power, but not as high as that 1200 watt that is the marketing number, so to speak. But generally speaking, when you're matching subwoofers to speakers, like you are in this case, we're going for a subwoofer on the bottom and a speaker on the top. You want your speaker to be about twice the power output you want your subwoofer to be about twice the power output as your speaker on top. This is because bass signals, low level sound like that, doesn't travel as well as high sound does, and it needs a lot more power to be able to output the same amount of sound that's balanced with your top end. So this is a 1000 watt program power sub, meaning it's designed to run at that power level. This is not a 1200 watt program. This is like what I said, more like a 600 watt program power speaker. So you're looking at about double the amount of power that this subwoofer is going to be able to produce over what the speaker can produce, and that's what you want. It's never going to be an exact pairing usually, but as close as you can get it. Basically, you just don't need a subwoofer that does way more power than that, or a speaker system that does way more than the sub, because then you're just out of balance, and there's no point in bringing that amount of firepower if the low end or the high end isn't going to be able to keep up. You do want to kind of have those balanced. Okay, perfect. So moving right along here, I've also put on here another one of my favorite subwoofers, which is a 1400 watt 2x12 inch powered subwoofer. So the one we just looked at is a 15-inch speaker. So if you were to look inside that, you would see a round speaker in the front here that's 15 inches in diameter. This next subwoofer I'm talking about has two speakers in it, and they are each 12 inches in diameter. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. So this one is designed to sit on its side on the floor like this. It's got wheels on the backside already, which is a bonus. You don't have to install your own casters here. Problem is, this one you can't basically configure it to roll as a cart. It's already got its casters there, and they're only on one side, so it's designed to be kind of dragged along the floor on its own. And it is very heavy as well, so you probably wouldn't even want it to be a cart because it might be a little awkward. But nevertheless, you can see the two speakers in there. Those are each 12 inches in diameter. This puts out a lot of juice, so you've got tons of options you can do with this. What I would use this for is when I'm in an outdoor setting, for example, or if I'm in a really large ballroom. These other little subwoofers we looked at here just don't provide enough power if you're in a really large ballroom. I'm talking one that's got like 400 to 600 people in it. That bass is just going to get a little bit lost. So you may want a little more low end there, and especially for outdoor contexts where there's just no walls to bounce the sound off of, you do need a lot more power in those situations. So that would make this a great option. And when I'm doing that, again, you've got your sub pole in the top to attach the speakers to. In those contexts, I would definitely want to have two of the line array tops sitting on top of that, because now you've doubled up the power of your subwoofer. It makes sense to double up the power of your top as well. It's not quite double, I guess. You've only got 1400 watts there, but it is then out of balance from your tops there. So you would want to get a little more top end power there. Okay. And I did put over there crowds up to 400 to 600 for larger spaces. Again, it's still a wood construction, so it's got a great sound. And if you did want to modify it by adding casters anywhere else on the body, in theory, you could do that. Although, like I said, it is a very heavy speaker, so I might want to not do that, but up to you. So we've covered our front end for both contexts where for many contexts now. We've talked about the small scale events, small sort of cocktail parties, wedding ceremonies, right up to the big sort of 200 or 300 person dance parties, maybe even up to 600 people indoors or outdoors with our large subs and line array tops. Next thing here we're going to get into is talking about, I see my sub pole here is hanging out down there. I'm going to drag that up. We do have a sub pole here that will connect your tops to your subwoofers there as well. Next thing I want to talk about is your stage. What do we actually do for the musicians on the stage? If you want to actually have floor monitors on there, these are the ones I recommend. We are going to talk about in-ear monitors as well in a moment here. But the things I recommend for floor monitors are once again made by Yorkville, and they are these beautiful little NX10C monitors. Okay, there are a few different versions of this out there. So this one is the NX10C2, which is, I don't know what, maybe the second in the series that they've designed or something. This is a little more pricey. You can actually find these other ones. My Long and McQuaid link here, they don't actually have the model number here, or no, yeah, sorry, here it is, NX10C. So there's NX10C and NX10C2. The 10C is cheaper. It's not as powerful of a speaker, but you're still getting a 600 watt peak here. I believe the program power is 300 watts. Here it is, program power 300 watts. This is plenty. I own 7 of these because I love them so much. You can see here how versatile they are. They actually have a hole that goes all the way through the speaker, so you can sit them on top of a speaker stand and push them all the way down like you're roasting marshmallows. Like, they sit on there so beautifully. And of course you can angle them around like you have here, so you can kind of almost make your own line array speaker with these, which is pretty cool. You can pop them on top of a speaker stand as well, just like that. And then of course you've got the ability to put them on the floor. They tilt back. They've got this little tilt mechanism in them. It's not a mechanism, but they've just the way they've designed it. It sits right on the floor, right in front of you, and angles right up at your face. It's just got the perfect monitor angle in there. A lot of speakers that are built to be monitors can't go both ways, right? They look great on the floor and they're on the right angle, but you can't put them on a stand. So they're the only thing you can ever use them for is a monitor. Or they're a speaker that like sits on top of a pole. For example, the EXM Mobile 12s that I've recommended here, they sit on top of a pole really nicely, but when you go to put them on the floor, they just don't rock backwards. So it's either like straight back where it's pointing straight up into the air, which is useless as a monitor, or it's right down on its side and it's aimed at your feet, which also doesn't work as a monitor. So I really love the fact that these can angle both backwards like that, or put them on a stand, because now you've got a speaker that's useful in many contexts. And that is why what I've tried to design most of my gear with is like, I don't want to just get a speaker or a piece of gear that I can only use in one context. I want to be able to use this everywhere. So this really allows you to do that. So like I said, there are a couple different models. The NX10C2 is just a little more powerful. If I go back over to this one, you'll see this is a 1200 watt powered speaker. I believe it's a 600 watt program power. So double the power that the NX10C original one without the 2 can do. But the NX10C1 this guy here, or the NX10C, is more than enough power you need for a monitor. Like, I've had these on stages in front of my musicians for years and years and years and years and years. Nobody ever has it cranked to the full amount, because if you're cranking your monitor that loud, you are going deaf. Like, you are 100% going deaf. This is at your feet, aimed at your head. There's not a lot of distance between your feet and your head, and this will just blow your ears off if you are getting this one up here, the 1200 watt. It's unnecessary in my opinion. So on the back of these guys, you also have this same sort of amazing little Yorkville mixer. You've got 2 channel inputs here, both combo jacks, so you can put in a 1/4 inch or a XLR cable there. And you've got a tiny little mixer here to control level, and a little bit of EQ on there as well. Generally, I do not touch the EQ on here. I leave all the volumes at unity gain there, and I do all the controlling from my mixer. But there is that option if you need it. You've also got the link option here, which is super helpful if you want to daisy chain your monitors together for whatever reason. These also make great little front fill speakers. So if you've got a really wide stage that's 25+ feet across, and your 2 speaker systems are on either side of the stage, then what's going to happen is, in the middle of the stage, you're going to have a bit of a dead zone. If you're using the line array system, like I said, you do get a pretty wide spread, but it still might not be quite enough power to make it feel like a party in the middle of the dance floor. So if you've got that dead zone in there, these 10C monitors can be put on the floor and flipped down so that they actually face right out into the crowd. You've obviously got to be on like a 4-foot stage or whatever to make this really effective, but your little 10Cs can sit right there, aimed right at your crowd, and they fill in this little dead zone of sound so that your speakers that are on either side of the stage can do their job out here, and your little front fills do their job in there. And you can daisy chain them together with that link connection there. So very helpful. All right, I think that's all I need to say about the Yorkville monitors there. Once again, make sure you get the right version. If you are, sorry, this one down here, I'm getting lost in my spreadsheet. 10C, there we are. 2 different versions there. I put the price for the cheaper one there, but if you want to splurge and get the more expensive one, you can definitely go for that. All right, next, we got to put speakers up on stands sometimes. So what do we do with that? I've recommended a heavy duty steel speaker stand right there. This one is great. They're cheap. They're only $49, and you actually get a 2-pack in this set here. These ones have a nice wide spread to their legs. They've got a little locking pin there. You definitely want to have a locking pin on a speaker stand. You don't want those sliding down as your speakers are sitting up there. So these are going to be great for mounting your EXM mobile speakers that we talked about up here for your outdoor situations. Obviously, you don't need a speaker stand for your EXM, which is the column speaker. For the PSA 1s, which mount on top of your subs with the use of the sub pole, you don't really need them for that situation either. So it's really just for your mobile outdoor setups if you're going to be doing that. By the way, note on that, in our next lesson, we're going to be talking about lighting. Don't use the speaker stands for your lighting. They're just not tall enough. I think these only go up to about 5 or 6 feet. That is not tall enough for lighting. So don't try to cut corners and cheap out and get yourself a speaker stand to be used for lighting, because that's just going to aim that lighting straight into your eyeballs all night long, and your musicians will hate you, and you will also hate your life. So try to avoid that. All right, let's talk next about a different type of monitor, not the floor monitor, but the one that goes right into your ears. If you're unfamiliar with these are the ones that you see if you watch any big famous artist performing these days. They'll have these little earpieces in their ears. Those are in-ear monitors. They connect to a body pack that's usually a wireless receiver, and that has a transmitter somewhere else in the venue that is feeding a signal into that person's head directly. 100% recommend you go for these. They do seem a little more expensive on the front end. Obviously, like one of these rigs, a decent quality one is going to cost you $749. I do have an alternate that I have been trying this one out recently myself. It's only $228. That is actually cheaper than buying yourself one of these Yorkville floor monitors, right? Unfortunately, with these, they're a one-trick pony. You're only ever going to use it to be an in-ear monitor rig. It's not like these speakers where you could use them as a monitor, or you could use them as a front speaker, or you could use them as a front fill speaker, or you could use them at a wedding ceremony. Like, you just take these anywhere. In-ear monitors, not the same thing. They're just for in-ear monitors. That's all you're going to get out of them. And it's required that every musician kind of have their own earbuds. These can be custom fitted or molded into your ears, or you can just buy them off the market and they'll generally work fine as well. It's sort of a matter of personal preference. But every musician does need to have their own, and that's an expense they need to bear unless you as the band leader want to be super generous and buy all your people in-ear monitors, which in my experience, band leaders, I know, don't do that. It's kind of ridiculous because if the band owns it, then people should be able to share it. Like if your lead singer tonight is different than the lead singer tomorrow night, they're probably not going to want to share the same earbuds because that's kind of gross. So everybody really should have their own. So if you're musicians, if you feel like you're going to get pushback and your musicians just aren't going to buy their own actual earbuds, don't bother investing in in-ear systems because they're just not going to work out that great. But let's talk about this Shure system here. This is kind of a very standard one across the industry. It's not super top of the line, but it does everything you're going to need it to kind of get into the market, and it's made by Shure. So you've got that kind of quality guarantee. I bought one of these rigs out of the rental department at my local music store. It's obviously already had some use and it's still working just fine. These are all battle tested. When you buy Shure stuff, it's going to last forever. You just kind of don't need to worry about that. So you'll see here, you've got the body pack receiver. So you attach this to your belt or stick it in your pocket. You've got a little squelch control on the side there. Or actually, sorry, that's not a squelch control. What is that? They don't have a better picture of it. That controls your balance, I think, a right and left sort of thing. And then on the top, you've got a volume knob there. Turns on the power there as well. It takes 2 AA batteries. And then your transmitter down here is where you will plug in your signal from your mixer. So you want to probably keep this in the same rack as your actual mixer. Again, away from your wireless router. This will send the signal out to the body pack for your individual performer. These, you can of course buy as many body packs as you want and link them to the same transmitter. So if there are people in your band who are comfortable sharing a mix, that's one way to do this and save a little bit of money. Again, they do need to share a mix because the transmitter can only transmit one signal, and you can have, it's just like having a radio station locally, right? You only need one radio station in your city and everybody in the city can tune into that radio station. So that's all this transmitter is. It's your radio station and these are all the receivers for it. So you can save a little bit of money by buying like this twin pack version they've got where you get 2 receivers with it and 1 transmitter. So that can work in certain contexts. For example, in my band, my horn section, we have a trumpet player, a bari sax player, and a tenor sax player. And they're all comfortable sharing a mix. So we were actually able to get a unit that has 3 body packs and just 1 transmitter, save a little bit of money by not having to get them all separate mixes. And that worked fine for that context. In my experience though, vocalists do not like to share a mix. So don't try to force your vocalists onto the same mix. And rhythm section players are all very picky as well. Probably need separate mixes for everybody in those contexts. Sure, I would say go with that if you've got the money. They start around $750. The other option here is this new company that's just kind of started popping up. I actually don't know when they started popping up, but it's recent in my mind anyway. Same kind of idea, but just a much cheaper product. Far, I've actually bought one of these. I tried it out on a gig recently and it did a great job. So I don't know if I would spend the money on Shure anymore if I can get this at 1/3 of the price. So definitely worth buying one of these, especially if you can get it from Amazon and return it in 30 days if you don't like it. No harm done. Try it out, get it for a gig and see what you think. The really nice thing about these units is that they come with all this rack gear. I want to stay on this photo, please. You can, I don't know if they're going to show me here. Nope, they don't show me the package contents there. But either way, they come with all of the gear you need to mount this inside of a rack, which is super helpful. The Shure systems actually don't come with that usually. You have to buy that as an additional add-on, which is more expense. So this is ready to put into your rack with all of your other gear. Other than that, it's got the ability to do stereo, just like the Shure one as well. If you start looking around for in-ears a bit, you will notice the difference being that a lot of the systems are just a mono. So you don't actually get a stereo mix into your head. It is nice to have that as an option. If you're going to use the PreSonus mixer I've recommended, you can couple those auxiliary sends in the back so that they send a stereo signal to your monitor. That makes 0 difference whatsoever if you're using a floor monitor because a single speaker on the floor in front of you is always just going to be a mono speaker. But when you're doing headphones, you can have a stereo mix, and that actually makes it really nice to perform on stage. The effects are better, the separation between instruments is improved, just a much better quality of life experience for all the musicians using that. So this specific unit I'm recommending is capable of stereo. You can also find this Phoenix brand in-ear monitors in a mono configuration as well, which I believe is a little cheaper. But these stereo ones can be run in both mono and stereo, so you're kind of getting the best of all the worlds there. If you don't have a mixer that's capable of feeding stereo signals to everybody's monitor mix now, maybe you will in the future. Maybe it's just worth the extra $20 or whatever it is to get a stereo in-ear system right now and be ready to go if you upgrade to that in the future. Looking at the back of the rig here, you can see it's just got a couple inputs there. You've got a little pad to taper off a bit of the signal if it's coming in too hot, and then your antenna position there. One really handy thing about this rig as well is there's a headphone input right there on the front. So if you need to monitor, like this would be useful when your sound engineer is doing a mix on the stage, or sorry, off stage, and one of your musicians is saying, there's nothing coming through my ears, or I'm getting way too much drums, or whatever it is. If they don't have control over that, your mixing engineer can come plug their headphones into this headphone jack right here and listen to the mix that the person is hearing. And that can be really helpful for live settings where you're trying to mix monitors, because when you get into the in-ear monitor world, the mixing engineer can't walk around on stage and hear what other people are hearing. The only way they can do that is by tapping into that person's individual feed. And this is how they can do that really easily. Okay, one thing I would say about this one though, the Phoenix system, is it's not super user-friendly. You really must read the manual unless you're just a genius. I don't know. I've used a lot of audio equipment over the years, and I found myself on the gig with this one recently going, I can't figure out how to change the channel on this damn thing. It kept flipping me into this weird menu, and I didn't know which button, and there were only 3 buttons on there, and I'm like, why can't I figure this out? I felt like a bit of an idiot, but at the same time, come on guys, bad UI, bad experience. I don't know why that is the way it is, but read your manual before you go out on a gig with that one. Not a huge thing. You can figure it out, I'm sure. But just a little side note on that one. They do also get you started with starter earbuds in this one. The Shure unit does not come with those. I doubt you would want to use those on an actual gig. I don't think they're the best quality. They usually really are terrible when they ship with the unit like that, but maybe they're good to have in a pinch. I always find like you never know when you got to rely on musicians to bring their own earbuds to the gig. There's always going to be a case where somebody shows up and forgot them. They're still in their bag at home or whatever. If you've got a whole bunch of earbuds just there as a backup, that will really save your butt on gig day. Even if it's not the greatest experience for the musician that day, but you just saved their butt and they kind of owe you one. So if they're going to be that forgetful about their stuff, sorry, you're going to have to suck up having not the best gig experience today because you're bad. Cool. All right. The other option here is a wired in-ear body pack. So this Phoenix one we just looked at is wireless, obviously. You can walk around the stage with this body pack. It's perfect for frontline players or horn players that move around, vocalists, everything like that. Maybe you've got a guitar player that likes to run out in the crowd and solo or something like that. Awesome. Get them a wireless pack. However, for drummers, bass players, people who are attached to their amplifiers, keyboard players, they're not going to be running around. Why not just get a wired body pack? They can stick this on their belt. It hangs off of their person. Yes, they're attached to a wire, but most people are, so not a big deal there. But this is a fraction of the price. Look at this, $39 for one of these bad boys. Compare that to the cheapest in-ear system that you would really want to consider buying. You can get them cheaper than this from no-name brand Chinese companies, but are they worth it? Probably not. But this is even so much cheaper than that. This is like, what, a tenth of the price almost. So this is a little belt clip unit. It just hangs onto your belt. You plug either an XLR or 1/4 inch into the bottom of it. You've got a little switch there to toggle between mono or stereo, and then you've got a volume knob on the top. There's a AAA battery inside this thing, and that is it. It is so simple. It is really dummy proof. This unit actually has 2 batteries inside it. Mine did as well. Different configuration. Okay. So there you go. 2 batteries inside there. Really easy to use. You can't really go wrong with these. So I would buy these. I have 4 of these in my band. We use them for drums, bass, guitar, and keyboard because those guys are the backline. They don't move around at all. They don't need a wireless system. And also, the less wireless you can get away with, the better, because wireless there's a limit to the amount of wireless gear you can have on any stage because they will start to interfere with each other. And then you get into really complex setups that, once again, we're not trying to get that complex with the small and medium scale production that we're talking about in this course. Those are the wired ones. Let's talk really quickly about earbuds. I put a recommendation in here for earbuds that you can check out. These are a $100 earbud, nice sort of entry level, getting started. You see these kind of fit right into your ear. If you want to get custom molded ones, there are a lot of companies that will custom mold these to your ears, and then they fit right into your ears. You got to get them changed every 5 or 10 years because your ears do change as you get older. So bear that in mind. That will be a constant expense you need to come back to. I personally just have the standard ones I bought that came with the buds off the shelf, and I find them to be totally fine. I don't think I even know anybody in my band that's using the custom molded ones right now, so probably not essential. Definitely get started with just the run-of-the-mill ones and see what you think. You can get these things up to as much as $800, $1,200 just for your earbuds. If you're really picky about your sound quality, maybe that makes a difference to you. It hasn't really for me. I have a pair that I think I spent $150 on years ago, and I'm still using it, and I'm still happy with it. I think I've got a couple different options on here. The one I just looked at. Okay, here's a $99 option if you're looking to just get into this and try some out. This is a Shure brand, so they're going to be fine. And then we've got a slightly higher model of the Shure ones here as well for $269 if you want to get a slightly better sound. Okay, perfect. So that's a lot. That's a mouthful. I feel like I need a glass of water, but I don't have water, so I'm just going to keep on going. And if you guys need a water, you can pause and come back at any point. But we are going to get into microphones and cables next. This is, like I said, the biggest lesson of this whole course. No other lesson is this long, but I just feel like it's so worthwhile to talk through all of this stuff with you guys. So we're keeping on going here. We're talking next about the Shure BLX24 PG58 wireless microphone system. Let's take a look at this bad boy. Like with all Shure equipment, this is rugged, built from this really hard plastic that's got this special finish to it that makes it nearly indestructible. You can drop these things, you can throw these things, they just don't break. And if and when they do, you can usually replace, in my experience, the only part that really breaks here is right here where this is the battery chamber in here. So you unscrew that and pull it off and you put the batteries in. This little threaded area in here where you screw it back onto the actual frame, that's the only part of this microphone that really breaks. And it does break, but you can get a new little battery casing for the end here, and they're only like $5 or $10, and then you basically got a brand new looking microphone. So these really will last a long, long, long time. The capsule at the top here, or the head, I should say, the pop screen here, definitely will dent as well. You drop these on the floor. This is the heaviest part of the microphone. It usually, gravity finds its way to aim straight down at the floor, and you'll get a nice bunch of dents in here over time. No harm done. You can actually go onto Amazon and find little pop screens that can replace this one. They're only about $5 each, I think. And then again, you got a brand new looking microphone. So every few years you can replace your pop screens on these, and having the versatility of taking off that part is really helpful. So you've got a few different channels on these microphones. I will say with these sets, you want to be careful because these are systems that you can't have an infinite number of these systems. I think with this particular one, they say the maximum is 5. So once you get beyond that, you're going to run out of frequencies. You'll see here there's a group and a channel knob control there. Once you run out of frequencies, these microphones will start interfering with each other, and you don't get desirable results in those cases. You really can't go beyond what they recommend there, so definitely read the manual before checking that out. Like I said, I think with these ones it's 5 units is the max, and generally you want them all to be set to the same group. So make sure you read the manual on all your wireless equipment, because you do need to know what frequencies they're operating in. The wireless headphones the wireless in-ear systems that I just recommended, the Shure and the Phoenix systems, operate in different frequencies, and you'll be able to choose when you're buying this equipment. So you'll see here the Shure option, we've got the G20 band. So the G20 is just sort of their internal way of labeling these bands for you, but this is 488 to 512 megahertz. So just like the radio station in your car, you might listen to AM 730, for example. That's 730 megahertz on the radio band. So you'll see none of these operate in those 700, because that's what your car radio is operating in, and they don't want to interfere with those frequencies that have already been reserved for those types of things. So you also want to be aware of these as you're buying wireless gear, because you don't want to buy a set of in-ear monitors that picks up in the 488 band range and then simultaneously go and buy a microphone that transmits in the 488 range, because then your wireless in-ear system is just going to be picking up the signal from your wireless microphone, and that's going to be silly. You're going to get a lot of interference. It's going to be crazy. No one's going to know what's going on, and it's going to be a wild and crazy time that nobody will enjoy. So make sure you do read the frequencies that you're operating all of this gear in. For example, this microphone, you can see this operates, if we bought the H9 band, that would go from 512 to 542. So now if I come back here, this one goes from 488 up to 512. So this would actually not be a bad combo because this one stops at 512 and this one starts at 512. But I don't know if they actually both operate in that frequency or not, like 512. So I might want to make this one start at 542 instead, because then I've got a safe distance between 512 where my in-ears end and 542 where my microphone begins. So bear all that in mind as you're purchasing out your wireless equipment there. What else did I want to say about this microphone? Rugged and durable, like I said. All Shure equipment's just battle tested and it's just going to last forever. I bought 4 of these microphones probably 10 years ago, and I'm still using them today. At one point, one of them did kind of crap out on me, and I sent it in and I got it repaired. Like, they were, I think, $500 when I bought them. For whatever reason, they're cheaper now. So that's great, but you can actually repair them and save money having to replace the whole thing. You do get long battery life out of these. They take 2 AA batteries in the microphone itself. And in my experience, you can get through at least 1 gig. I use some special batteries, which I'm going to be talking about further along here. But those batteries will last at least 1 gig, sometimes almost 2 gigs. That's really handy. Notes I wrote right in this sheet. Make sure your wireless frequencies don't compete with other wireless gear. So do make mention of that. The one thing I will say that is a little bit of a pain in the butt with these microphones is that their low battery indicator doesn't give much warning. So if I go back to that, you'll see right on the front of this gear here, you see where it says ready. Underneath there's that little green LED light. If this microphone is got a decent amount of charge, that light stays green. As soon as it detects that the battery level is a little bit low, it turns red. And that just means the battery's low, but you don't know how low. Is it so low that this mic's going to die in 5 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes? You don't actually know. So I would love it if these things had a little bit more of a battery indicator on them. I do have another wireless microphone, I think, that I'm going to recommend here. Nope, I didn't put it on here. Never mind. Some microphones you'll see do have a more of a battery indicator that show you exactly what level the battery's at, which is super helpful. So that's the only con to this unit, is that you just got to be ready to go and replace those batteries basically as soon as that light goes red. I will do a little aside and share with you guys some knowledge about batteries. So when you're looking at batteries, you're going to see different battery components, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a bit, but you've got nickel metal hydride batteries, which are NIMH. You've got batteries that are sort of a cadmium base, NiCd, and then you've got alkaline batteries. Those are kind of your main 3 you're going to see out there on the market. Alkaline batteries, for the AA and AAA, they run at a solid voltage of about 1.5 volts. And as they die over time, that voltage kind of tapers off, and they get to a point where they get to about 1.1 volts, and then they're considered dead. And that's when they kind of just don't work in the equipment anymore. Nickel metal hydride batteries, or NIMH batteries, will run a lot longer than alkaline batteries. They've got a much greater battery life, but they actually run at a lower voltage at around 1.2 volts. So if you go and look this up online, you'll see these differences between the two. The nickel metal hydride batteries, because they're running at 1.2 volts, obviously that's a lower voltage than the alkaline battery, but they last way longer. They maintain that 1.2 volts for a lot longer. And then as they start to die off, they die really quickly. So they'll go from like 1.2 volts for 9 hours straight until all of a sudden die off. And in about 20 minutes, they go from 1.2 volts to 1 volt, and then they're out. As opposed to alkaline batteries, which have a much more steady decline. So when you're buying equipment that's configured for an alkaline battery, you'll get a lot more warning when your battery's about to die. So if, for example, you used batteries in alkaline batteries inside this Shure microphone here, the low battery indicator would come on, and you'd maybe have another 30 or 40 minutes to use this microphone, in my experience. But with the nickel metal hydride batteries in there, because your battery level is already quite a bit lower, when that low battery indicator light comes on, you're basically already out of battery, and you really need to move on getting those replaced fast. So just a little sidebar about batteries. We'll talk about more about that in a little bit. In terms of using these microphones, as you can see here, you can actually program the group and channel right inside the microphone itself so that it can sync up to its receiver. be able to receive in the right spot. But really, that's all there is to it. Nothing super complicated about those. All right, moving along to the same thing, but in the wired version. So if you're running any kind of project, you've probably seen these around. I don't need to talk about them a lot, but the SM58 microphone is the hands down the best microphone out there for so many different applications. You can mic instruments, you can mic human voices, you can do drum overheads, like basically whatever you need. This microphone is ready to do it. Super sturdy. You can drop these, you can throw these. I think I've heard people dropping these things into the ocean and they're still fine. Like they just will withstand anything. You can, of course, get cheaper microphones that look like this. Don't be the goof that buys those, though. These ones just have the best frequency response, the best durability. You 100% will not regret owning these, and you need a bunch of them because they're going to do everything for you. Not a whole lot more to say about these things. You can replace the head on these as well, just like you could the wireless ones. So that is the one part of these that will degrade over time. Just as time goes on and more people sing into these things, they fill up with lip scum and lipstick and spitballs and whatever else go into there. It kind of gets disgusting. I recommend to all the singers I know, just go buy your own mic ball. Like that's what this is called. It's a mic ball. It's a pop screen. You can just bring that to your gigs, screw off whatever gig the ball they had on top when you arrived there and put your own on. That way you're not sharing someone else's lip germs all night long. Because if you wouldn't consider just making out with anybody, probably don't consider using the microphone that they just used, because that's basically what you're doing. So I recommend doing that. You can have a few of those mic balls on hand, and once this microphone has suffered a few falls, it's going to look really dented and ugly. The paint, the chrome finish kind of wears off the top there, so it's really nice to be able to refresh those and make them look good, especially when you're rolling into a wedding situation. You don't want a microphone like this all banged up and battered and looking like hell when you're rolling into a wedding ceremony, because people actually care about looks in those situations. So good to have that ready to go. All right, next microphone you're going to need here is the SM57 microphone. Actually, this is exactly the same microphone as the SM58 we just looked at, but just with a different head on top. So you don't have the pop screen filter in there. So I wouldn't recommend using this for vocals, because you're going to get a lot more of the p and t. Doing it into my microphone, hopefully that's coming through. The pops and things like that you don't want coming through a vocal microphone. These make great drum overheads or drum microphones, or any sort of instrument amp that you want to mic that's not going to have the same sort of problems in projection issues that a voice would have. So very, very essential to have a bunch of those in your kit as well. All right, let's talk drum mics. Once again, guys, we're not doing studio audio here. So is Samson the best microphone brand out there for all of your microphones? No, probably not. But you're going to get a kit that mics every single drum. You've got a snare, tom, 3 tom mics, a kick mic, and a couple of overheads there. You can get other mics that even have a little mic specifically for the hi-hat. But in my opinion, this mic kit will be fine for you. This one's awesome because it even includes a bunch of Shorty XLR cables, which are going to be super helpful to get all of these mics from their positions in the air around the kit onto the floor, where you'll probably have a snake sitting and ready to accept all of those. It's only $289. We just looked at these other two wired mics here, the SM57 and 58, that are $100 each. You're getting 7 mics here for $289. That is a killer deal. Yes, you can buy a Shure drum mic kit that has an SM57 for each one of your toms and your microphones. You're going to pay triple the price for that kind of thing, right? In my opinion, once again, because we're doing a live sound setup and there's just so many other things we're dealing with in a live sound setting, and no one's going to notice the exact quality of your snare drum or whatever. I shouldn't say nobody, but nine times out of 10, people in the audience are not that big of music aficionados that they're really going to hear the difference. So a drum mic kit is like this is totally acceptable. You may even be able to luck out, find something like this on eBay that someone is getting rid of at half the price and save yourself even more money. But that's great. The only thing I would say about that specific kit is that maybe you're missing the hi-hat mic in there, but an SM57 does a really great job of that. So if you've got one of those kicking around in your kit from here, go ahead and use that there. All right, next thing we're going to need is mic stands. A microphone is absolutely worthless without its stand. And I should also sidebar and say a microphone is absolutely useless without its clip. The clip is the little part that connects to the shaft of the microphone itself and connects it to the actual mic stand. I don't even have was going to pick one up and show you, but I don't have one kicking around here. Every microphone has its own clip that fits specifically that microphone. You'll see on these drum mics, they have little clips that connect to the actual microphone itself. So those are going to be very specific. And in this case, that little grabber there actually grabs the edge of a drum. This over here is an actual mic clip. So in the bottom, you've got a little hole put there that you can screw this onto a microphone stand with. The SM57 and 58 microphones will come with their own specific clips. There it is right there. That's this component right here. And you do not want to lose those. Make careful note to always store your microphone clips with your microphones. Do not leave these on the mic stands at the end of the gig. You may think you're saving yourself some time, but there's inevitably going to be a situation where you grab the wrong bag of mic stands, or the microphone stand that has the clip on it that belongs to this specific microphone is back at home in your studio, and you're at the gig and you've got no clip for your microphone. When you have no clip to attach this to a microphone stand, you can't use the microphone, right? If you're trying to mic your overheads of your drums, you could have somebody stand there at your drum kit and hold the microphones all night, but no one's going to do that. So this microphone is rendered useless. So always store your microphone clips with your microphones, not with the microphone stands. On that note, let's talk mic stands. So Amazon has this incredible deal on mic stands. I don't know how long this is going to last, but you should just get it. I bought one of these myself and I have not regretted it. These are stellar mic stands. They're as good as any mic stand is. But you get a full set of 6 microphone stands along with a carrying case. Absolutely do not buy mic stands and not have a case to put them in. Mic stands are the bane of my existence, and they will be of yours too. There are so many little moving, grabbing, twisty parts on these things that they will always be grabbing your fingers, and you try to pick up a bunch of them and you're going to pinch your thumb and turn it blue. They're horrible. You do not want to be lugging these around anywhere without a case to put them in. They fall all over the place. They stretch out. They're a nightmare. They're an absolute nightmare to deal with. Lock them in their own little case and leave them there because you do not want to have these flopping all over the place. This deal for 6 stands with the carrying case is $190. That is an insane value. Typically, these mic stands run anywhere from $40 to $60 a piece when you buy them in a music store. So if I do some quick math here, 190 divided by 6, you're paying less than $30 because the case itself, if you bought that on its own, it'd probably be another $30. So insane deal. Don't even think about it. Just buy these mic stands. I recommend, if you're going to go with this audio setup, get two sets of these. 12 mic stands is kind of what you're going to need. Obviously, depending on your band size, if you've got a 7 to 12 piece band, absolutely you're going to need 2 of these. Instrument microphones can be clip-ons, drum mics can be clip-ons, but you've got your drum overheads, you've got your vocal mics, you've got a mic you're going to need for MC. It never hurts to have a couple spares kicking around. And because there are so many moving parts on these things, like the little twisty knobs in the middle, those will strip and need to be replaced with time. Sometimes the feet get broken, so it doesn't hurt to have spares on hand all the time. Moving along here to our extension snake. All right, for those of you who don't know what a snake is, this isn't actually really a snake, it's more of a loom. But well, actually, no, I guess it's still a snake, but snake and loom, kind of an interchangeable word. But essentially what you've got is one cable here that combines 8 cables into one place. So instead of having to run 8 cables all the way across your stage, you can do it once and be done with it. You really got to think about cable runs when you're getting into pro sound production, because underestimating how long it's going to take you to run your cables around everywhere is the first thing that is going to cause you to fail at this business. Cables roughly take 30 seconds to a minute to wrap at the end of the night, and they probably take you the same amount of time to run across the stage. So if you were running 8 cables across the stage, that's going to take you about 4 to 5 minutes, right? If you can do that just one time, now you've saved that 4 or 5 minutes on both the front end when you're setting up and when you're tearing down. This one single snake is going to save you 10 minutes at every gig, right? If you have use for 2 of these, now you've saved 20 minutes on every single gig. If you've got 100 gigs a year, now you've saved, 2,000 minutes of your, like, you see how this adds up over time. Every little thing that we think about putting into our rig, we want to try to reduce the amount of time needed for setting up that piece of gear as much as possible. Where I use the loom like this is when I'm setting up drums. So for example, the 8-channel snake is really great. In most contexts these days, what I'm doing is I will have a kick drum mic, if you just look at our drum mic kit we had before, that's a 7-piece kit, right? You've got 3 toms, you've got a kick, you've got a snare, and you've got 2 overheads. If you want to add another hi-hat mic to that, now you've got 8 mics on your drum kit. 8 mics on your drum kit fit perfectly into this 8-channel loom. Now, this specific mic kit you bought, hopefully, came with all of these, I'll get back to it here, came with all of the little XLR cables to connect it to your loom. So now you've got a perfect combination. That gets you as far as these, and then this will get you all the way to your mixer. So if your drum kit is in the middle of your 25-foot stage, let's say then it's going to be about 12 feet from the side of the stage. Your mixers may be another 6 to 10 to 20 feet away from that. This loom is going to work to get you there. It's got 30 feet of extension in there. Once again, it's going to keep that cable run really neat and tidy for you because you're just running 1 cable instead of 8. And it just makes your life so much easier. Definitely invest in a labeler, which I will recommend in a bit as well. So you can label all the ends of these. So it's really easy for anybody to just help you out and patch things in. If they pick up the end of this and it says kick, and they pick up this one and it says snare, and they pick up this one and it says tom, high tom, medium tom, low tom, whatever, they know exactly what to plug those into, and that can really help people help you. So definitely get yourself a snake for handling all that kind of stuff. Recommend having one of those. And again, that's a great price as well. When you look at that, this snake's $93. If you were to buy what I'm talking about next, our XLR cables here, a single XLR cable of 25 feet is about starting around $15, right? So 15 times 8, that's $120 worth of cable that you're getting for $93. And it's saving you all that time. So this is just a no-brainer. Go get that snake. Don't even think about it. All right, let's talk next about XLR cables. These generally come in 3 different denominations for the sizes of events we're doing: 25 feet, 50 feet, and 100 feet. 25 feet you're going to need the most of. Some companies I've seen basically only get 50 footers. I think that's excessive. In my experience, most of the cables I run every day are 25 feet, and that's all I need. If you're buying cables that are longer than you actually need, A, you're wasting money, but B, you've got this spaghetti of cable mess on your stage all the time when you've got like 25 extra feet of cables sitting at every drop point. It's just a lot more for people to trip on. It's a lot more hassle. It's a lot more cabling for you to wrap at the end of the night, and it's going to waste your time too. So time, money, all that stuff. It's just that whole having the wrong equipment for the wrong job. Get the right equipment for the right job. If your mixer's 12 feet away from your keyboard, you don't need a 50-foot cable to get there. 25 is going to do just fine. So in my band, you see I have a lot of these. These are actually my gear numbers. I own 70 of these cables. You may not need that many. If you've got a 24-channel mixer like the one I've recommended, you're going to need 24 cables to get into that mixer. You're going to need 2 more to get out to get to your mains. You might need up to 12 more to get out to all of your auxiliary mixes. And then you may need extra things to do things like connecting your subs to your tops. That's another cable. You may want to connect your lighting fixtures together. Those are more cables. And then, of course, you want to have spares on hand just in case anything craps out. So when we talk later about the minimum viable rig over here, I'll actually make some recommendations as to how many cables you might need there in the minimum viable rig, but you really can't have too many of these, I don't think. So the ones I'm recommending here are an Amazon Basics. Once again, is this the top of the line audio cable you can purchase in the world? Absolutely not. But is it totally going to work fine for audio settings in a live context where people's ears are, maybe they're drunk, maybe they're inebriated, maybe they're running around, maybe they're talking to other people. They're not really focused on the music, and there are a lot of other things distracting them. And there are just a lot of other things to fight with your audio setup, like a weird room setup, like acoustic drums that are overpowering your mix. Whatever the case may be, these are absolutely going to be fine in the live context. Plus, they're cheap, so they're easy to replace if somebody steps on one or cuts them or closes them into a rack case and slices it in half. It's not going to be the end of the world for you. If you're spending $50 on every 25-foot cable you've got, you're basically walking around with cable gold, and that is really going to hurt every time one of those cables gets lost or destroyed. So pretty standard basic cables here. They've got really nice connections. I have been purchasing Amazon Basic cables in my rig for the last several years. They've held up just fine for me. I do take care of them. I don't wrench on them. I don't beat my gear. So hopefully it will last just as long for you. But you can see here there are different configurations. You can get different sizes of them here, but the 25-foot is what I'd recommend. And then of course the 50-foot as well. You're going to need some of those. Sometimes I have noticed, if I switch over, no difference today. Sometimes I've noticed the 25 feet pack of 2 is actually a really good price. These used to be about $20 when I used to buy them. So it was actually a much better deal than getting a standalone cable. If you just bought them in packs of 2, you could save a lot of money. They don't seem to be offering that anymore, but maybe it is going to be offered there when you're checking this. Obviously, when I record this course, the prices are what they are, but they may change over time. So hopefully they go down for you. Okay. The nice thing about the Amazon cables as well is that they come with Velcro straps. Absolutely essential for wrapping all your cables is that you need to have Velcro straps, and you want flexible cables as well. These are a really nice, soft, pliable rubber. Really impossible to tell by looking at a photo how the rubber is going to feel. But you can usually tell by the photos how they're wrapping the cables. And in this case, Amazon wraps them in a circular way, which means that cable is already configured for its life in the real world. This is how you should wrap your cables. You should wrap them in rounds like this. And later on in the course, I'm going to share a link with you guys on exactly how to wrap cables. There is actually a bit of an art and a process to it in order to extend your cable life and make your setup and tear down a lot easier. So these are already wrapped nicely like that. And you can see each cable comes with 2 Velcro straps. You really only need 1 Velcro strap per cable. So this is really nice because you've got a backup, or if you've got cables that you bought that don't come with straps, you can take one off of here and move it over there. So that's super, super helpful. I will go out on a bit of a tangent here and see if I can find another cable for you guys that I would not recommend you buy. I'm just going to look up cheap XLR cable, and bear in mind the Amazon Basics one are basically as cheap as you're going to get. I think there may be some cheaper ones out there. Okay, here's an example one. I don't know how these would be, not showing me how they wrap it, but sometimes you'll see them wrapped in like a figure 8 kind of pattern. Here we go. This one right here. Do not buy these cables. Do you see how the factory has presented these? These are squashed in this weird configuration. I can't tell by looking at this if this is a soft pliable rubber or not, but if the rubber's just beyond soft and pliable and it's a little bit too hard, if the factories wrap them in this sort of almost figure 80 kind of pattern, you are never going to get this cable to stretch out flat on the floor. It's always going to have bumps and lumps in it. People are going to be tripping on it all over the time. And you're never going to be able to wrap it in a nice way that sits nicely with the rest of your cables. So you can see here, even they've taken off that wrapping, and you can see it still, this cable does not want to go into a circle. It wants to permanently be in this oval weird shape, which is not going to make this cable easy to work with at all. And you will hate yourself for having cables like this in your case. I did this when I first got into the business 15 years ago. I went on eBay and I was like, I need a whole swag of cables. And I bought, 50 25-foot cables that were some ridiculously low price. I think they were like $6 a cable. And within a year, most of them had stopped working. They were impossible to wrap. The connectors at the ends were falling apart. It was just awful. And now I've still got them sitting around. I don't even know what to do with all these dead cables that are just useless. I basically used them to install lighting in a venue I worked at years ago just by using them as ropes. I was just wrapping them around poles so that I could attach lighting fixtures to pipes in the ceiling and stuff, so they weren't actually used to transmit any audio. So not where you want your cables to end up. Beyond the 25 footers, which you're going to use for just about everything, I always recommend having a bunch of 50 footers in your rig. One of the biggest use cases for these is when you're connecting your mixer, which I would generally position at the back end of the stage. In fact, I'm going to go find my band's stage plot here. I want to show you that. Here's my band's stage plot. So when we have our front line across the front of the stage here, this is the audience down here. Then we've got horns, we've got vocals, we've got rhythm section in the back. I would put my mixer either over here in the back right corner or over here in the back left corner, because I've got my subs and speakers in the front here, and I've got my lights right beside those. So in order to reach my mixer station here all the way to my main on this side of the stage, my cable has to run all the way across the front of the stage and all the way up the side here like this. And you can see here, it says minimum 24-foot wide stage. So you're going to need a 25-foot cable just to get across the front of the stage. If this stage is 20 feet deep, all of a sudden you can see how you need that 50-foot cable to get from your mixer all the way to your main over here. Now, of course, you can join two 25-foot cables together. Absolutely no harm done there. XLR cables can be joined for hundreds and hundreds of feet and literally no degradation in signal there. So that is an option, but it is kind of annoying and it does make setup and teardown take a little more time. So I do find having a couple 50-footers in the bag for those instances really, really helpful. In our next lesson, we're going to be talking about lighting, and I do actually link my lights together with XLR cables as well. And having 50-foot cables is really handy in that instance because I'm connecting a light fixture from the left side of my stage to the right side of my stage, and you're coming down the length of a light pole, which is about 8 feet in the air. You're transferring all the way across the 24-foot width of this stage and then up another 8-foot light pole on the other side. So you can see how you're going to need a 50-foot cable in that instance as well. And it doesn't hurt to have them if you're trying to get over to this side of the stage, either keyboard and guitar amp. That might be just a little bit longer than 25 feet if your mixing station's way over here somewhere. So definitely worth having a few of those. I think in my rig, I carry around 4 as a minimum, and that's usually fine for me. 100-foot cables, not really necessary unless you're doing fill speakers. Those are super, super helpful for fill speakers because you can plug it in once at your mixer. You can run it all the way out. I usually find about the 75 to 100-foot mark is where I need my first fill speaker. So one of these 100-foot cables is going to get you all the way there. And then another 75 feet to your next fill speaker. You've got enough cable there to get to that one as well. So those make it really, really handy, but not really essential if you're not doing anything with that kind of a distance. I do have, of course, the recommendations there as well. I don't believe the Amazon Basics come in the 100-foot cable, so I've got this GLS Audio one, which should be fine for doing that. Once again, don't go too cheap on these 100-footers because that's a whole lot of cable to throw out if it's a crappy make and it doesn't withstand time for you. Next thing you're going to need is patch cords, 1/4-inch patch cords. Generally, these are just used for connecting an instrument to a amplifier or to a DI box. So they don't need to be very long. 10 feet is probably as much as you need. And I'm recommending these Seismic Audio ones. Probably not, again, the top of the line stuff, but in my opinion, in my experience, most musicians show up to the gig with their own patch cords. So you almost never have to provide these. So I really only have them in my rig as a backup in case the musician shows up without one, but I use them maybe 10% of the time. Okay, 1/4-inch to TRS, male to XLR. So if you're unfamiliar with the different terminologies here, this type of connector here is called an XLR connector, and specifically this is the male one, simply because it has a prong on it. The female version of this has a hole that you insert the prong into. So very basic. Over here, we've got, this is a 1/4-inch and specifically a TRS, which stands for tip, ring, and sleeve. And you can see there, the tip has a black little ring, and then there's a ring after that, and then another black little ring, and then a gold ring, long gold ring after that. So if I just click on that, zoom in here. So we've got it's doing something silly. Tip right here, and then we've got ring right here, and then sleeve right here. And this is a balanced 1/4-inch cable, we call it, which means the signal is not likely to pick up radio interferences because it has a ground in it. I'm not going to get into too much as to explaining how all that stuff works, but you're welcome to do more research on that should you need more information on it. But these are super essential for getting signal from the back of our mixer. The 24R mixer has 1/4-inch outputs on the back of it. You will need to plug this into that 1/4-inch output, and then this converts that 1/4-inch into a XLR signal so that you can run that out to your floor monitors. These are not generally essential if you're going to use in-ear systems. Let me just go find my in-ear system here. The back of the Phoenix system, you can see, has a combo jack there, so you can plug a 1/4-inch cable right into the back there. So one of your patch cords that we looked at earlier, 1/4-inch patch cords, would work fine to connect your mixing console. This guy right here, the back of that, these 1/4-inch jacks out can connect into the Phoenix Pro input. But if you are going to connect to a floor monitor, where these ones here are NX10C floor monitors we looked at earlier, the back of these, they do have a combo jack and you can put a 1/4-inch into there, but we don't have long enough 1/4 inches, right? We've got the 10-inch ones included in our rig. I don't recommend going much longer than this because a 1/4-inch patch cord, if you were to connect to a speaker, that could actually pick up radio frequencies and other things if it gets too long. And the reality is, to connect to a monitor most of the time, you're doing quite a long cable run. And when you have monitors, maybe 6 or 7 monitors across your stage, and they've all got 1/4-inch cables running to them that are not grounded, you run the risk of having some hums and buzzes coming out through your monitors. So I prefer to run XLR cables to my monitors, which means I'm going to need these connector cables to adapt this 1/4-inch output from my mixer into the 1/4-inch input that my monitors require. All right. Next thing here, we've got cable ties. Absolutely necessary for all types of cables. Like I said, if you're going to get those cables from Amazon, the XLR cables, they come with some cable ties, but you're going to buy a whole bunch of cables that do not come with cable ties, and you need to have cable ties ready to go for those ones. Also worth noting that cable ties do not last forever. The Velcro does wear out, and the ties themselves do break. So you always want to have spares on hand ready to go for those instances. They are cheap. Here's $10 for a pack of 60 pieces. Nice and easy to afford those. Last thing you need here in terms of cable stuff are DI boxes. Hopefully you know what these are. If you don't, they are basically just a way to convert that 1/4-inch signal again back to an XLR signal. So it's got an XLR out on one side and a 1/4-inch in on the other side. And what this does is it generally grounds the signal. If you're taking a keyboard, for example, you would plug the patch cord from the keyboard into here, and then the XLR from this side into your mixer. It ensures that the signal stays clean from its path all the way from the source into your mixer. Because like I said, if you've got a 1/4-inch cable that is too long, it can pick up radio frequencies and get that signal sounding kind of muddy. So we don't want that in there. I believe we're talking about, I've got a video on grounding later on here that I can share with you guys as well. DI boxes are also really handy for what we call ground lift. You can see on this photo right here where it says ground right there, on or off. Usually if there is a buzz coming out of your speaker or coming from your instrument channel, it's because there's a ground loop going on. And if you flip that switch to cut the ground loop in there, you can get rid of that buzz. So very handy to have DIs for those situations. Once again, DIs come in many, many shapes and sizes. You can get this model I've recommended. It's $42.99. It's got your basic features. All you really want in a DI, in my opinion, for the live setting like this is your ground lift. That's the most important part. And of course, just being able to do the basic DI function of turning your 1/4-inch into the XLR there. But you can get all kinds of DIs that have all kinds of really crazy functionality and go from anywhere from this price of $42 up to $300. In my opinion, in a live setting, once again, you just don't need something that's got that studio quality to it if you're just doing stuff in the live setting. So if you've got huge budget to splurge, go ahead and buy some radial DI or something that's going to cost you $300. But in my opinion, these ones will work fine for most contexts you're going to be working in. All right. With all that said, I think we're going to skip over the lighting section because we're doing that in our next lesson. This lesson is already 2 hours in. I hope you guys are having fun, learning lots. You may need to rewatch parts of this video over and over again because obviously there's a lot of stuff we are covering in here. So moving on next to power. Power. Super important. Obviously, we need lots of power to run a rig like this. As a sidebar, I will say that for the rig I'm recommending, which is our minimum viable rig here, but all the equipment kind of recommended in this sheet we're looking at, if you have 2 circuits, meaning 2 individual dedicated circuits. I'm not talking outlets. That is different. Power outlet. I'm just going to look this up for us. Power outlet like this. Okay, this is a power outlet, and this has 2 power outlets on it. These are not circuits. These are just outlets. So in a venue, if you see this on the wall, it's likely that's a circuit. If you go look at another circuit somewhere else on the wall, usually in venues that are set up properly, they'll have a little label somewhere on the front of this circuit with a number on it. And that is the identification number of the circuit on their circuit board. So the important thing for you to recognize is that if this says C1, for example, and this says D32 on some other part of the wall, those are on different circuits. And that is very important to note because that is what you want. You don't want to put this entire rig on one circuit because you will blow it. When we're talking about electricity, we have, going to make a little number here. So if you go back to high school physics class, there was a formula that went like this. It went watts equals volts times amps. So you probably all know that a circuit is 120 volts, right? Or somewhere thereabouts. In North America, our circuits are generally between 110 and 120 volts is what'll come out of this single wall outlet when we look at it like this. So you get 120 volts out of there in total, okay? And the amps we're talking about, that's the amount of current that travels along that circuit, will generally be around 15 amps, okay? So when we come back to this formula, if we want to figure out how many watts are coming out of that circuit, we have to go volts. So let's just say 120 volts, and we go times 15 amps. So if I do this on my computer here, 120 times 15, that's going to give me 1800. So I know that only 1800 watts are going to be able to come out of that circuit. 1800 watts. Now, if we go back to our speaker setup here and we look at the program power that our speakers are able to operate at, this one here, our subwoofer is going to be operating at about 1000 watts. And our speaker system up here, remember this was the peak power, not the program power. The program power for this speaker was somewhere around 600 to 700. So you add 600 to 700 plus 1000 there. Now you're not going to be running your subwoofer at 1000 watts all night long. That's going to be, you might, but that would be a really, really loud, crazy party. But even if you did that and you ran your whole system at full power, you'd just be getting up to about 1700 watts maybe. Then you've got your mixing console, which in the case of the PreSonus console here, uses very, very little power. There's two lights on the front of it, and then it's basically a computer. That uses very little power, so you don't have to worry about that. The lighting I'm going to talk about in the next lesson is all LED. That uses very, very little power as well. So basically 16 to 17 to 1800 watts is kind of all you're going to need to be able to run this rig, or sorry, one side of this rig, very important. So the entire rig itself has two sides, right? You've got your sub and your top on either side of the stage. So you're looking at 16 to 1800 watts on either side of the stage if you're running this rig at full power, which means you need two circuits because this one little circuit we're looking at here is only going to give you that 1800 watts. So you do need to make sure you're running this rig off of two circuits. All right, so just wanted to make sure we thoroughly address all the power concerns here because you definitely don't want to overexert your power system in your venue and blow out a circuit in the middle of your show. So always make sure you're running two circuits. One great way you can monitor your power usage is through this ART power distribution system. It also helps clean up your power. So I'm going to open up this. On this specific rig, there is no dial on the front, but you can purchase rigs. If I go and see if I can find another one here for you guys. Nope, it's not going to be on this page. I can't seem to find another version of this one right now, but this unit, what this is doing is allowing you to kind of put a barrier between your system and the power of the building that you're working with. So you never know, especially when you're getting into old historic buildings and heritage sites and things like that, the power in those buildings might be kind of dirty. Maybe it's got ground loops happening, maybe it's not grounded properly, it could just be a messy signal. So putting it through a system like this cleans up the power so that there's no buzzing and weird sounds coming out of your speakers. It also provides some surge protection. So in the event that there's a power surge, you don't want that making it to your equipment. So this will protect from that. And there's a little fuse on the front here that will blow out first and save all the rest of your gear from exploding or melting down. Not what you want to have happening on a gig. It also serves as basically a power bar. So on the back here, you've got 8 different outlets you can plug into. That makes it super helpful. They're spaced out, so you got space for your things that have big fat power outlets and stuff, and then some ones closer together there. You can get different versions of this that have little dials on the front that show you how much power you're using at any given moment, just like little dials on a little thermometer looking thing. So you can see how much wattage is actually going through this thing and whether or not you're getting close to blowing out a circuit. Those cost a little more. Not totally necessary in my opinion. I've never really actually even used it. I have one that has a dial on it in one of my rigs, and I don't ever find myself looking at it. Maybe I should, but I don't. I just know, having built this rig so many times on different gigs, that I know it's just going to be fine if I just plug it into those two separate circuits. So that's that. Definitely need a power distro system like this, especially if you're running floor monitors, because floor monitors are notorious for having little buzzes and things come through them. And it can be a real pain in the butt to figure out where those buzzes are coming from. Is it the instrument that's causing that? Is it the fact that there's no DI in the way? Is it the power source that the instrument's plugged into? Is it the power source your mixer's plugged into? Is it the power source your monitor is plugged into? It could be any one of those things. So what the power distribution system does is it cleans up all those sources. And then what I would do is I would plug all of my monitors into this power system. And that way I know all those monitors have clean power. And what I'm actually going to do next here is recommend to you some little hacks to get power out of your monitors and to the instruments that are near them. That way you know that all that power is clean as well. So I'm going to dig into that in a moment here. But really cool little system. Definitely need that in your rack. All right. 25-foot power extension cords, and we've got a few different options here. So I've got 25-foot extension cords with outlets on them. I've got a 25-footer with 3 outlets at the end of it, and I've got a 50-foot extension. Again, depending on the types of events you did, from the last lesson you would have outlined all of the events you're doing. You may need more or less power cord or longer ones or shorter ones or whatever. But generally in my arsenal, I find 25 and 50 footers to be totally fine. Let's take a look at this first one I've got here. This one I absolutely love because it has power outlets throughout the cable, not just at the end of it. So when you lay this out on a stage, you can kind of see how it is positioned here. There we go. There's like outlets all the way along. So in the 25 feet of cable, you've actually got 5 outlets to work with, all in different places. So you can run one of these across the front of your stage and one of them across the back of your stage. And you've got power in basically every spot that you need it. And if you plug both of these into that power conditioner that I just showed you in the previous step right here, this box, you plug those into the back of this. Now you've got clean power going everywhere on your stage. And whatever's happening in your venue with their crappy power supply, you don't have to worry about it. So very, very helpful cable there. And also this is a 14 gauge cable. So you'll see gauge on cables. Generally speaking, you don't want to go lower than a 12 gauge, but you can research what all those different gauges mean. All the cables I'm recommending here are going to be totally fine for the type of rig you're running here, but you're welcome to research gauges more if you need to gauge yourself more. All right, 25-foot power cord in this version, straight ahead cable, no outlets along the length of the cable, but rather just one big outlet fan at the end of it there. What I love about cables like these is this one actually has a light in the end of it. I don't know if there it is. So the whole end of it lights up as soon as you plug it in if the power is working. One super annoying thing about some old venues you'll go into is the power outlets aren't working and you don't know, right? How do you know if a power outlet's working? Well, you could stick a key into it and electrocute yourself. That's no fun. Or you can do something like this. You can plug in, as soon as you plug in your cable, you'll know if that outlet's working or not because that cable's going to light up. So that's actually really helpful. It also is helpful, obviously, to be able to find the outlets because quite often these are hiding behind amps in dark places on stages. And if you want to be able to plug something into them, having a little light there to be able to line up those annoying little connectors, so you got to get into exactly the right holes. It's really helpful if there's light there. So I love cables like this. For that, you're going to need cables like this to get from the outlet to your stage area. This cable we looked at previously where you've got outlets along the whole length of the cable, super helpful for on the stage itself. But if, let's say, if I go back to my stage plot over here, this is our band stage. Let's pretend this is a really big venue and somewhere way down here is where the outlet is, or it's way over here in the corner, or it's way over there in the corner. You're going to need another power cord to get from the outlet just to the stage, right? Just to that power conditioner that's sitting here at the side where your mixer is. And then you branch out into those other connector cords. You don't necessarily want outlets sitting all the way along the wall over here. That's just kind of a waste. So super helpful cord there. Then we've got the 50-foot cable here. Again, I don't think I was able to find one that had a light when it gets up to a 50-foot cable. So, but again, these ones are really just helpful for those crazy situations where your stage is so far away from the power outlets, way on the wall over here, and you need to get 50 feet over to your stage. That would be a really helpful case for that situation. All right, here's a little hack. Super, super handy. I love these things. Whoever invented this is a genius. They're the simplest little things. But if I go back to my Yorkville monitors here, see if I can see a backside of version of this. All right, check it out. The back of this monitor has this little thing right here. This is an AC, alternating current. This actually outputs power. So your power input goes in here, but then you can plug this little thing right into there and turn that into a new power outlet. See where this is helpful, right? If you're running floor monitors, where did I go here? I'm lost in my tabs. If you're running floor monitors, you want to have let's say you've got a guitar player and you've got the monitor on the floor right in front of them and they want to run a pedal board right there. You can just plug one of these little guys right into the back of their monitor. And now they've got an outlet sitting right there for them to plug their pedal board into. You could, of course, plug a power bar into this as well. And now they've got 6 outlets to work with. So it just makes it really, really helpful and easy for you to actually jump power out of that speaker. And because we plugged that monitor already into our power conditioner over here, this guy, we've got clean power going into that monitor, and now we've got clean power going into that pedal board as well. Super, super handy, and a lot less cords to trip over. At the end of the night, instead of having to wrap another whole extension cord or power cord or whatever, you just pull that out of the back of the monitor and you are done. So helpful. I love these things more than I can express. All right. 25-foot IEC cable. For those of you who aren't familiar, actually, I'll go back to this one too. You may need to know this terminology at some point in your tech career. These cables where you have the 3-prong, obviously in North America, these are referred to as NEMA 5. Okay, that's their type. And then we've got IEC is this one over here, where it's this guy right there, also known as C14 for whatever reason. IEC, no one calls it C14. I've never heard it referred to that way. Everybody calls them IEC cables. You should too. They're IEC cables, and once again, this is the pronged version, meaning it is male, and this is the female version of the NEMA 5 that we're looking at there. So, as we're talking about this now, this is an IEC cable, and in fact, this is the wrong version here. I'm going to find you guys a better version because this is not actually the IEC I wanted. Sorry, this is the one I want. So this takes your NEMA 5 male, which you can plug into any standard wall outlet, and converts it to IEC, which is the receptacle for all of your, or which is the power input you need on basically all of the speakers I'm recommending here today. All of them need this kind of power, the IEC power input. Most of the speakers you're going to buy will come with these already. That's just sort of standard issue, but a lot of them in my experience are too short. You're going to buy speakers that come with a 6-foot or maybe an 8-foot. And in reality, sometimes you want to have a speaker that's not that close to an outlet. So it's really helpful to have these, especially in lighting situations where your lighting is hung up on a T-bar or something that's 8 or 10 feet off the ground. The short cable that it's shipped with just might not be sufficient. And these do wear out over time. If you can't get power to your speaker or to your lighting equipment, it's useless, right? You can't turn it on. So it absolutely is essential for you to have a bunch of these sitting in your rig as spares at all times. And they're cheap, so just load up on them. You will need them. All right, power bars with surge protection. Also very essential, right? You're going to be running power across your stage. You need to be able to hop into that. So let's take a look here with our, if we're getting a bunch of these, we got one of these at the front, one at the back of the stage. Let's say there's one little power drop like this at the spot where your bass player is going to be standing. Well, that's great. They'll be able to plug their amp into that, but nothing else. They're going to probably have a pedal board, maybe an amp head, maybe a light, maybe a fan, right? Musicians travel with all kinds of crap these days. So you're probably going to need a whole bunch more outlets at each one of those drop points. This allows you to obviously do that. I love these ones that have USBs built right into them as well. You've got the old USB, original USB, as well as USB-C on there as well for them to plug in their iPhones, iPads, and devices and things like that. Plus, you've got a long extension cord on this as well. These are 12 feet long, in my opinion. More than enough cable there for you to just kind of work off that original power cord, this one here, and get to wherever it is your musician's actually standing. Super helpful there. A lot of power bars just have a little short, like 1-foot cable attached to them. So these ones having a 12-footer on there is really nice. All right, taking a breath. Holy moly, this is a lot of talking. I think this is the longest I've ever talked for in my life. We're going on 2 and a bit hours here. Batteries. Batteries are next. Super, super important. I already mentioned batteries a little bit earlier. We talked about nickel metal hydride versus nickel metal cadmium. And of course, you want to get those rechargeable because you're going to go through batteries like crazy. And if you can't recharge them, they're going to quickly add up to be a very large expense. Not worth it, in my opinion, when you can recharge them so easily. But let's just do some very quick mental math, okay? If you've got, like I do, I've got a 9-piece band. I've got 4 people, at least 4 people singing, sometimes 5. They each have a wireless microphone and they're all on wireless body packs. So I've got a wireless microphone with 2 batteries in it times 5 singers, right? 10 batteries right there. They've each got a wireless body pack. That's another 10 batteries. We're up to 20 batteries now. Then I've got 3 horn players. They each have microphones as well, which clip onto their instruments, and each require 2 batteries as well. So now we've got 6 more AA batteries. That gets us up to 26. And I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I can't remember right now. 26 batteries in use at any given time. At any given time, those batteries could die, and they need to be replaced instantly. You can't wait for batteries to charge when you're in the middle of a show. So you always need to have enough batteries to have in the equipment at any given time, and you need to have batteries on standby for all of that equipment. Better yet, you should probably have a set that's on standby, ready to go, and another set that's in the charger. Because as soon as you move the batteries from your standby pile into the devices, now you've got a dead set. If you forget to put that dead set into the charger right away, which you likely will because you might be in the middle of a show, you don't want to run out of that next set and then be totally screwed. So you really need to have your active set, your dead set, and your set that's in the charger. So you need 3 sets of batteries for every one device that needs them. So in my case, 26 active batteries at any time means I'm going to need 26 plus another 26, meaning I need 78 batteries for every show that I want to do. I would imagine your setup is going to be fairly similar to that if you're going to have a lot of batteries out there, a lot of devices out there that need batteries. So you're going to need a charger like this. This charger has 16 bays on it, which is great. I love that it's got an extra 2 bays for 9 volts as well. Those are actually really hard to find. This was the first battery charger I'd ever seen that has a 9-volt charger on it with all these other things. You can charge AA's, you can charge AAA's. It's got a battery repair function in it. That is one thing you will experience with these types of batteries is sometimes if they die and you leave them too long, they actually die. They're like actually dead, and some chargers won't even recognize them when you put them in there. They don't think there's a battery there. So in those cases, you need a repair function, and this charger can actually do that as well, which is really cool. It's got an LCD screen that shows you the exact level that each battery's at, which is super cool. Some batteries just show you a charging and then a charged light, and that's not super helpful when you've got 16 batteries in there because they're all at different levels, and this charges them all independently, which is also really great. But if you don't buy 3 sets of batteries like I suggest, and you just go with 2 or something, and you get to a point where your batteries are dead in your device and you need to go harvest some out of your charger, it's really helpful to see which ones are actually fully charged and which ones are not charged at all, so you can make a decision as to which ones to pull out of there. So if you're going to be running a big enough production, I have 2 of these chargers. You might need actually the same. So 100% recommend that charger. That is a great way to go. Let's talk about batteries a little bit. So like I mentioned earlier, we have nickel metal hydride batteries, which are these ones here. NIMH is the abbreviation of that. The other ones you'll see are NICD. You want the nickel metal hydride ones. The cadmium batteries are better for other situations. I'm not even going to get into all the details about that. But just know that nickel metal hydride is the best for these situations where you're doing stuff on a stage with batteries, with equipment that you want to last for a long time. And these ones have specifically a 2800 milliamp hour charge, which is some of the best available out there. It says here you can charge them up to 1200 times. I don't know anybody who counts this, like kind of impossible to count how many times you're charging a battery, but basically they're going to last a really long time. And of course, at a price of $28 for 24 batteries, you're looking at about $1 a battery, which is a great price. I've paid $4 a battery for these kinds of things in the past, and it's totally worth it even at that price. So at $1 a battery, doesn't hurt to give these a try. There's even a coupon there today, so look at that. What else can I say about these? Batteries. At 1200 charges, lots of capacity. Perfect. That's all I really need to say about batteries. I've got a link on here for AAA's as well if you need those. In my experience, the only case I needed AAA's for were some of my wired body packs. They require AAA's, but everything else I was using, one wireless clip-on horn mic that I was using did use AAA's. But everything else is pretty much AA. So before you go out and buy a whole bunch of AAA's, make sure you actually need them. Order all your equipment first and just see what your needs are. All right, last thing. You've now got 76 batteries kicking around. Where are you going to store them all? Get yourself some of these. These are great for storing your batteries. You can put 4 AA's in there or 5 AA's. What I do is I actually label each of these cases. So for example, my singers need a backup set of batteries in case their wireless microphone dies, and they also need a backup set in case their wireless in-ear body pack dies. So I give each singer a pack of 4 AA batteries that is labeled with their name on it, and they can pick that up at the beginning of the show and know that they have charged up batteries ready to go at their feet the whole time. So when you've got 26 batteries in use on your stage at any point in time, it's a lot for your sound engineer to keep track of. Just bear that in mind. They've got a lot going on with everything else they're doing. It's very unlikely that they're going to be able to keep an eye on all of the battery levels on all of the devices that are out there, proactively change batteries. So you really do need to make that the responsibility of all the musicians and say, hey guys, if you're using a wireless body pack, if you're using a wireless microphone, or whatever the case may be, take responsibility for your own batteries. When you notice them starting to die, replace them. Here's the pack of batteries to do that with. And then I would go a step further and say, when your batteries do die, take them out and go put them on the charger right away and harvest some freshly charged batteries and put them back into your little box here. That way you've got the whole cycle of batteries flowing all the time. It's everybody's responsibility, not just one person, and it works a lot better that way. I will go another step and give you another little tip on battery storage, because when batteries are in these boxes, it's impossible to tell if they're charged or not, right? Wrong. You can tell if they're charged or not by the way you position them. In looking at this little box right now that I'm looking at in my viewer here, in my band, these batteries would all be dead. The way I know that is because they're all lined up parallelly. If I instead stagger them, so the first battery's facing one way and then the next battery beside that one is facing the opposite direction, then the next one's facing the opposite, and the next one's facing opposite, I know those batteries are charged. When you put batteries into any device, they're almost always going to be in that alternating pattern, right? Let's see if I can find a battery device here. I know we saw one earlier. I gotta close some of these tabs because this is gonna get insane. Here, we might be able to see it, sort of. You can kind of see it hiding in the back there. See those two batteries hiding behind there? They're alternating directions, right? One of them's gonna have the little plus on the top, one's got the plus on the bottom. So we just remember in my band, that's how the device needs them. Right? You're putting them into the device charged. They need to be in alternating direction. So if they're in an alternating direction in storage, they are ready to go. If they're in a parallel direction, that's not how they go into the device. So don't put them into the device because they're dead. That's our little code that we use. I would highly recommend you develop a similar code or just steal ours, because that will save you all the headache. Then everybody can just look at a pack of these batteries and know instantly which ones are charged and which ones are not. And anybody can see, oh, hey buddy, all your batteries are dead. You should probably go put them on the charger. Or, hey, I'm feeling really good today. I'm going to do that for you because I know your batteries are dead. Again, super cheap. Really nice little $7 for a 10 pack of those. That's incredible. Just go buy them. All right. Last two items of business here. Oh my gosh. Where are we at right now? This lesson is 2.5 hours right now. Love it. All right. We're going on to cases and storage. First of all, I'm going to recommend a 19-inch rack mount Roar. This is, in fact, I'm going to first of all let's talk about the rolling rack case first. I've used the word rack a few times so far. In case you guys thought I was talking about anything else, no, this is not rack of lamb or rack of anybody. This is a rack. And this is what it looks like. You've probably seen these everywhere. They've got these little holes up and down the sides, and you can attach gear into there, and it looks awesome when you do. Are we able to see this? They don't show us any gear in it. I was hoping I would be able to see some gear in there, but I can't. But anyway, you can install your mixer in the top of this. You can install your power conditioner that we've talked about earlier. You can install the drawer that I'm about to talk about. And that is all going to be really awesome. And then, of course, it's going to get very heavy because all of that stuff exists in one place, and you're going to want to be able to roll this around. This one has wheels on it and a little handle, which makes it really nice and easy. I would recommend always get the Gator brand. They are just so well built, and this stuff is bulletproof. You don't have to worry about it falling apart on you because it's got thousands of dollars of your your valuable equipment in there, right? You're going to have your wireless microphones, maybe your in-ear body packs or your in-ear transmitters. Everything can live inside here. They're not cheap, unfortunately, but they are necessary. You cannot get this rack gear around without it being in a rack. And you really, really, really want to configure your mixer up here, your 24R mixing console. You want to put that in there somewhere. You want to have my router lives in there, but when I'm doing shows, like I said, put it far away from the actual thing, but it does live in there in transit. I have all of my in-ear systems plugged into there as well, so another couple rows for that stuff. I would have a drawer, which I'm about to show you, where all my wired body packs would live, as well as all my wireless microphones and body pack receivers for in-ears. I would even store, like I said, the wireless microphones in there. What else to put in there? Of course, the power conditioner here, our power-based distribution system would live in there as well. So everything lives in there, and then basically you plug all of that gear into the back of this power bar, which lives usually at the top of that module. And then when you get to the gig, you plug in this one thing and you switch it on, and the whole rig comes to life. And it is such a rewarding feeling when everything just lives in there and you're not having to plug in a billion things because it's already just there ready to go. So absolutely necessary. Then you're going to have a drawer, like I said, where you're going to store all of your wireless microphones and everything like that. So this installs right into that rack case. Definitely get a 2U drawer. A U, this thing here, is the unit measurement that we use to describe the height of these racks and the amount of spaces you have in them. So basically every space in here is referred to as a U. Rack has a, what is this here? I think it should have a U there unless they've decided to call it an L in this case. No, okay, sorry. That is a 10U rack space right here. So that means it's got 10 spaces on it for your gear. This is going to consume 2 of those spaces. Our mixing console we looked at earlier, the PreSonus 24R, is also a 2U mixer, meaning it's going to need 2 spaces. Every one of your wireless microphones, those consume like half a space usually, so you can put 2 of them side by side. So they'll take up 1 space for 2 microphones, 1 space for 2 transmitters for your in-ear monitor systems. And then of course your power conditioner that we looked at here, this is going to consume 1 space. So you want to go and add up all the space consumption from all of these devices you're planning to plug in there and make sure you purchase a rack that is tall enough and has enough spaces for all of the gear you're going to put in. I would also say if you don't buy this one I would, just kind of a perfect case in so many ways, but one of the ways is because it's got these little rails you see on both sides. Some of the racks you'll see only have rails on one side, which means you can only install equipment along one of the sides. But because there are rails in both sides, you can install equipment both ways. In the case of a drawer, for example, like this, the drawer is so wide that it's going to consume the whole depth of that rack. But in the case of a wireless microphone, its depth is really only about half of this drawer. So you can actually install wireless microphones on either side and have them matched up to each other. So you could have a row at the very top here. You can put your wireless microphones in there at the very top, have 2 across the front top space, and then another 2 across the back top space, and get 4 devices into that one rack space, essentially. So think about that as you're building that stuff out and measure the depths of everything to be able to handle that all right. Okay, so we've got all our heavy duty equipment installed in our rack. That's ready to roll. We've got our PA set up. That's ready to roll. What about our cables? Cables you absolutely have to store somewhere. In my opinion, absolutely the best case to store cables is inside these very specific Rubbermaid bins. Try not to get creative and go buy other things. Just go with these ones. These are made of a special rubber that is both flexible and sturdy at the same time. I have had the same 2 Rubbermaid bins in my rig for 15 years. They just do not break. You could run over these things with a car. I haven't tried, but they're so flexible that they would just bounce back. It's really, really cool material as opposed to like harder plastics that would crack or break. These have to be able to withstand so much. You got to be able to throw them in the back of your car and have stuff sit on top of them and bang around in transit and be okay with that. They've got to go through cold. They've got to go through hot, and they've got to hold a whole bunch of stuff in there. These have just been the all-around best thing. And this specific size, you can get taller ones, you can get smaller ones, but this specific size is the really magical size for being able to put cables, because if you put a whole bunch of XLR cables into this thing, it's going to get heavy. And this is about the size where it's heavy enough that most people can manage without getting a hernia. We don't want to give anybody hernias on gigs. So of course you can get larger ones. There's these ones here are taller. If you filled that up with XLR cables, you would make that very, very heavy. You'd probably be struggling with it. Remember that when you're doing gigs, there's a lot of equipment to lift, and the easier you can make it on yourself and the easier you can make it for other people to help you, the better. Right, so Rubbermaid bins for your XLR cables. I would also put my power cables in there, and I would keep them separate. So I'd have one bin specifically for XLRs, one bin specifically for power cords. That's how I do it. And that's just how it's always been the best working case for me. Okay, speaker stand bags. So we talked about speakers stands earlier. You're going to need a bag to pop those in. I found this nice one for us. Once again, Gator, highly recommend. That stuff just seems to last the best, in my opinion. And you want to make sure they're long enough because not all speaker stands are created equal. And this one is nice and long. So you want to make sure you're doing that right. Label maker. Hello. When you have this many cables running around in your life, you want them labeled, not just for identity purposes, right? Not just your cables actually either. Like all of your gear, I would put a label on it with your name and phone number. Obviously, if someone's out with malicious intent and they're trying to steal your gear, they're probably not going to be like, oh, this belongs to so-and-so. I better give them a call and return it. That wasn't their intention. But if you leave stuff behind at a venue, or if somebody picks up something of yours by mistake and they're a member of your band, much better chance of you getting it back if your name's on it, right? Of course, masking tape and a Jiffy marker can work, but it's a little bit annoying when you're having to label so much equipment. And if your writing is not completely legible and clear all the time after you're working on your 500th label, kind of pointless in labeling something if nobody can read it. So this is the label maker I've been using forever. I see it's currently unavailable on Amazon. Maybe you can find it somewhere else. I think there was maybe there's a model here that is available. But either way, check it out when you're ready to buy it. Hopefully it is available. Really simple. You, of course, just type in whatever label you want. It spits it out. I would label your cables not only with your name, but cable labels are really helpful for labeling. Like, for example, I actually in my rig, I have every instrument's cable labeled. So I know this cable's always going to trombone. This cable's always going to the kick drum. This one's always going to the drum overhead. That way I know where every cable is going. If someone offers to help me out with setup, I can just hand them a stack of cables and I don't need to explain anything anymore because they can just read the cable and know exactly where that needs to go. It also makes it very helpful for troubleshooting, right? If you're reading, if you've got everything plugged in and for some reason you're not getting any signal out of the kick drum and you walk over to the mixer and you're like, okay, kick drum says it's plugged in, but I don't know why I'm not getting signal on this. You can walk around the stage and be like, oh, look, the kick drum mic's plugged into the guitar amp. Well, that's why. But if it's not labeled on that end, you would never know when you got to the guitar amp. You've got to like trace every single cable. It gets really annoying. So labeling your cables there can be a really handy thing to do as well. And of course, labeling your looms. The loom that we looked at earlier for your drum mics. Let me just tab over to it here. There it is, this guy. Definitely want to label these as well. They obviously have little tiny numbers on them, but you can't even really see them there. Like in the photo, they're hard to read, and they're just as hard to read in real life, and they're exceptionally harder to read when there's no lighting and you're in the dark, right? So if you've got a nice big fat white label sitting on the end of every one of these cables that tells you this is channel 1 and it is kick drum, and this is channel 2 and it is snare drum, that makes it so much easier to work and get your job done efficiently. That's our label maker. Let's talk about outdoor event requirements, guys. We're thinking about wedding ceremonies, cocktail parties. And if you're in a nice part of the world where there's nice outdoor settings, you're going to be outdoors a lot and under the elements. So you need to have a tent ready to go. You do not want all of your expensive equipment outside baking in the sun or drowning in the rain. So I've got a couple tent options here for you. They are so cheap nowadays. $150 gets you a pop-up tent. I think the 8x8 one isn't available right now. Let's see if the 10x10 is. $160 for this tent. This one's really strong. You can do your pull-ups in there. Look at you go. This is awesome. A little bit of a tent. You can pop that up, cover all of your gear. I would recommend getting one with walls as well because it's nice to keep those prying fingers away from all your crap. If you're doing a outdoor event and there's a crowd bumbling around you, last thing you want is people just strolling into your tech tent and, I'm Doug and I used to be a sound tech. Can I tell you something about your mix? No, Doug, get lost. I do not want to hear about that. And neither do you. So this helps keep the audience away, keeps the elements away, and protects your stuff. So no reason to not have a tent in your arsenal. These are also really easy to rent for a lot of money. You can easily add these onto your invoice for like $60 to $100. You've rented this thing out 1 or 2 times and you've already paid for the cost of owning it. So just do it. Waterproof speaker covers. These are some of my favorite things to have because they just take all the stress out of outdoor events. The last thing you want is, like I said earlier, some bird coming and crapping on the back of your speaker or a freak rainstorm suddenly popping up and you realize you've got 10 speakers around this field and there's no way you're going to cover them all in time. Or just the sun, just baking all of your speakers and frying everything. This will prevent all of that from happening. It's a nice, lightweight little $16 bag that is designed to have sound go through it. It is not perfect. It's obviously not ideal. It will affect the sound quality a bit, and you want to get your equalizer out and deal with that a little bit. For all of the things it is going to prevent, all the damage it will prevent, absolutely worth it. No question. Don't even think about it. Just get a bunch of those. Leveling shims. Every now and again, you're going to have a speaker that's kind of wobbling around if you're doing an outdoor event. It could be your tent. It could be a speaker. It could be a subwoofer, right? If a subwoofer is not sitting flat on the ground and you're planning to do our trick where you put the sub pole in the subwoofer and you mount your speakers on top of that, you need to have something to level that. Otherwise, your speaker is going to be all wobbly and dangerous. These are great. They stack on top of each other and they don't slide around because they've got those tiny little prongs sticking out everywhere, so they lock themselves into each other. Nice and cheap. Get a couple of boxes of those because you will lose them. Those are very, very handy for all sorts of things. Cable covers. Very, very essential, not just for outdoor events. I would use these actually for indoor events as well. This specific cable cover is really handy. They're not super heavy duty. As you can see here, you're really only going to get a couple cables into these, so not necessarily what you'd want to use for, you know, a cable run with like a ton of cables in it. But these work really nicely, especially for fill speakers or long power cords. If you're, let's jump back to our venue here. Let's say your band is set up over here and your power cord's way over there and there's a door over here. People are coming in and out of this door. They're going to be walking over your power cord all night. You don't want that. A, you're going to trip somebody. B, they might knock your power out in the middle of the show. C, they're going to damage your cord and you're going to have to replace it. And that's expensive. So these little cable covers are enough to prevent all of that from happening. They're a flexible, rubbery material that it kind of rolls up. You can store it in one of those Rubbermaid bins we saw earlier, nice and easily. It comes in a 30-foot chunk, which is way longer than you would ever need to use it for in practice. So what I do is I cut it down to 5-foot chunks. It's easy enough to cut with a pair of heavy-duty scissors. If you've got an X-Acto knife or something, make easy work of that. Even a bread knife could probably get through this just fine. So go ahead, chop it up into 5-foot chunks. That's more than enough to cover a doorway. If it's a double door, you just put 2 chunks side by side and you're golden, you're in business. I do use these outdoor as well if I am doing a big cable run out to a fill speaker and it's just an XLR cable I'm running along there. Totally fine to use these in that case as well. Very, very helpful and not that expensive. When you work that out, it's about $3, $3 a foot for this stuff. Essentially, I rent this stuff out for a lot more than that. So they will pay for themselves very quickly. That said, these are not suitable to cover the road. So that is why we need our heavy duty yellow jacket cable covers, which look like this. So I found you this one on Amazon. They open up and you feed your cables into there like so. They've got a couple tracks in there. This would handle a lot more cable than the one I just showed you. And of course, a lot more pounds as well. This one says it can handle 22,000 pounds per axle capacity. So that is basically a small cube van, I think. Maybe even more than that. An average vehicle is around 7,000 pounds or something. So any car or truck or whatever standard vehicle is going to not be any problem for this. Of course, you'd run a couple of those probably over the roadway. I think these come in 4-foot chunks or something like that. Can't see their length here, but something around 4 feet, I believe. That would get you across bigger roads. Now, last thing I think for outdoor events, jumbo garbage bags. I would also recommend you have a tarp as well. I don't have a link for a tarp in here. Pretty easy to find. You may have one, but generally you wouldn't want to use it most of the time. But in an emergency, if your tent blows away, for example, and all of your stuff is suddenly exposed, it's really helpful to have a really large piece of rainproof material that you can just throw over things really fast and kind of save their lives. But aside from that, large garbage bags are going to be your friend, specifically clear ones. Why clear? Because you can pop them over lighting fixtures. Sometimes you want to have lighting outdoor, and in our next module where we're going to talk about lighting, some of the light bars that I recommend actually can fit inside a large garbage bag like this. And if you're just going to put that up outside somewhere, now you've just made your lighting fixture waterproof. And that is super helpful to be able to just put them outside around whatever outdoor space you may need them in. Of course, any other sort of electronic devices that need protection from rain at a moment's notice, very helpful to have garbage bags in those cases as well. And of course, if it happens to be your mixer or an iPad or something that you still need to see after you've covered it, that's why we choose the see-through bags. If you get the black bags, you can't see what's on the other side of it. And if you have to throw it over top of your mixer or something, now you have to pull it off every time you want to change a setting on your mixer or whatever it is, or just read a lighting or something. Clear bags are your friend in those instances. And of course, jumbo ones, because the bigger the better. All right. Whew. Last thing to discuss in this lesson is transportation. I have two recommendations for transportation. One is the Rock and Roller multi-cart, and that looks like this. There are so many versions of this cart. You can see them all listed out here. These are they're the most handy things in the world. I'm just gonna click on this video and we're gonna watch it. I don't know if you can hear that. So check it out. It's so small when you're moving it around, but as you get into using it, you'll see there it is sort of, where is it? It was sort of in a dolly configuration there. There you go. So you can kind of turn it into a dolly if it's up on its side, but if you are just rolling along with it, it stretches out and it has sides on either end there, so it really holds your gear nicely. You can have this little sort of tray tabletop thing you can configure with it. Just so many uses for this thing, and because it turns into such a small thing, it's so easy to throw into the car as well. And it makes sense and it's kind of logical to use, whereas some of the folding dollies I've seen out there, my business partner has one that I still can't figure out. We've had it for years and I cannot get this thing to extend the way I want it to when I'm using it, and it drives me crazy. So these things are a lot easier to use than some of the other things out there. But as you can see, so many different configurations. I can fit my rack onto this along with 2 bins of gear. And in fact, let me go and find that photo from earlier, because I will show you my rock and roller cart in action. Here it is. Here's me setting up a gig. So here's my rock and roller cart right over there. And you can see here it's fully extended. I've got 2 of my Rubbermaid bins sitting there. I've got my rack over here with all my gear in it. I actually have another rack over here. I've separated mine out, so I've got all of my wireless microphones up here, and then I have my mixer along with all of my wireless in-ear monitors and things in this box there. I've actually got a couple monitors on top here. I've got my case of drum microphones and another case of drum microphones or other microphones rather. And then I've got 2 soft cases on top, one with mic stands and another with speaker stands in there. So that cart is carrying so much equipment. I've got all my XLRs in this bin, all my power in that bin. So between these 2 carts, all of these speaker stands and mic stands actually fit on top of here. They just came out of those bags. So you can see here my entire rig rolls on just 2 carts. I'm able to get in and out of a venue so fast. I do sound system setups by myself. I don't even need help with this because it's so easy to move 2 things. My whole front end speaker system is here. My whole monitor and mixer and cable system is over there. Absolutely cannot recommend the Rock and Roller cart enough. Once again, don't even think about it. Just go get it. They're not the cheapest carts around, but they last forever. I've been using the same one for probably 10 plus years at this point. It's still got loads of life left in it. Obviously, you can get 500 pounds onto this thing, which is insane. The R12RT, I believe, is the one that I have. I would highly recommend that one. I know someone with the R18. This one's super heavy duty. I kind of wish I had that one. It just looks awesome. It's got fatter tires. It's a thicker steel and much more heavier duty. And I kind of wish I had that one. But if you're planning to do what I'm doing, maybe just go get that one, because you might thank yourself for it if it's available. All right, so that's awesome. What about a vehicle to store all this stuff in? The great thing is, you guys, you don't need a huge cube van to move all this stuff around. I actually fit all of this stuff easily into the back of my Toyota Sienna. And I love this van because it is so versatile, specifically the older models. Unfortunately, the new Toyota Siennas do not make it easy for you to remove the middle seats. So as you can see here, the middle seats in the newer vans don't actually come out. But in the older models, you could fully remove the middle seats, and then the back row of seating here folds directly into the ground. This is a full 4x8 piece of plywood they've got in the back of the car here, so you can see how much storage space you have in the back of this van. For the minimum viable rig I'm recommending in our course here to fit in the back of this van, you don't actually need to take the middle seats out either. You can keep all your seats in this van. The 2 subwoofers and the 2 tops, along with the rack you're going to have, some monitors, your 2 bins full of cables, they all fit in the back here behind the second row of seats. And then you can put things like your lights and other mic stands and things too on top of the seats in the middle if you wanted. This van is so versatile because you've got all that space when you're in transit, but let's say you're taking your 8-piece band out to a gig in the middle of nowhere. You you all travel out there in a few different vehicles, but then you unload all of the gear and you want to go grab some pizza or whatever, you can flip all the seats back up in your car and suddenly be able to transport 7 people in here, where before maybe you didn't transport any, but now you've got 7 seats available, ready to go again, and you can all just go off for pizza and you don't need to travel in 10 cars anymore. So super handy for that. Plus, of course, because this isn't a high top, meaning it's not very tall, and because it's not a super extended car and very long, you can get this in all sorts of situations, like onto ferry rides, into parkades, into single car parking stalls in downtown busy city areas, right? When you upgrade to owning a big cargo van or a big cube truck or something, it drastically increases the complexity of your setups, because you can't just leave a vehicle like that anywhere. You can't fit it into most parkades. So now you're scrambling to look for places to park this thing that aren't going to cost an arm and a leg. Quite often they do. So that's another expense you have to add into your pricing packages. And of course, if you buy a big enough car, you might need a special license for it, and that then means a lot of people can't drive it. So this is normal class of license that anybody can drive, easy to maneuver. I love the handling of these Toyota Sienna vans. If you do want to grab one of these, unfortunately, the model you would need to look for is between 2004 and 2010, which means it's kind of old. But if you can't find a vehicle like this, or if you've got something against minivans for some reason, just try to find something that's got that flexible interior in the back, where, like I'm looking at here, where you can fold down the seats, you can create yourself a little bed. And I would say, if you're going to do this with all these vehicles where the seats fold into the ground, you end up with a whole bunch of little divots everywhere. And take a look at this one. You're going to see how, like, the handles of the seats are there. You've got this hole in the floor over there. It makes it really hard to roll your subwoofers and things like that around in the back here. So what I actually have is a piece of plywood that I lay down in the back, and I've covered that piece of plywood with a really thin layer of carpet. So it's nice to kneel on if I need to crawl around in here on my knees. And if I need to move subwoofers around and just roll things around easily, they're not getting stuck in all these divots that are created inside this van by default. Another little trick for you. So that's my recommendation for van. Again, you can't kind of go past that 2010 model, or the middle seats don't come out anymore, in which case it's hard to kind of manage all this stuff. Sometimes, like I say, in most cases, like, you can fit this rig into the back of the van without removing those middle seats. But if you do scale up and you do need to pack your tent or a bunch of extra fill speakers or something like that, you are going to run out of space, and having those seats removable in that case really does make a difference. All right. Whew. Ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between, this has been quite a run. This is over... Well, I think we covered at least 50 pieces of gear in this lesson. I am exhausted. I think you probably are too. This was a lot of brain power to get through this. Key takeaways from today's lesson. Well, obviously selecting the right audio gear is really crucial for delivering a professional sound at every event. So I pointed you in the direction today of all the best pieces of gear that I would recommend for the small and medium size events that we are talking about. Knowing the gear is just as important as owning it, though, so do take time to learn each piece as you pick them up. Watch videos online of them ahead of time and make sure you know what you're getting into. And of course, a well-planned audio setup can really enhance your band's performance, increase your client satisfaction, so many other benefits to that. When my band started doing its own sound and having in-ear monitors, the quality of life for our musicians just grew exponentially, right? You're in so much control of what you're doing and how you're sounding, and it's just so much more fun. When you're having that much more fun on stage, that translates to the audience. They can have just as much fun. Everybody wins. So absolutely worth doing this, in my opinion. All right, as a learning activity, guys, review the gear list I provided here and compare that with your existing current gear inventory you put together in lesson 1. From that, obviously, you'll be able to make a list of all the gear you need to purchase to fill up any gaps in your setup. And then you may want to just go and research the cost of all that gear and create a budget for all of your audio upgrades. Maybe be a next step. So what is next? Well, in the next lesson, we're going to look at lighting gear and breaking all of that down. We'll be exploring lighting options from stage setups to dance floor effects and even uplights. You'll learn how to create a professional ambiance and energy for all the different event types so that you can set the stage for an unforgettable performance. So hope you're excited about that. I will see you there. Take care.